Hey, good afternoon. Today's May 30th, and SPL is about to happen, so let's jump into it. Pittsburgh Knights versus Luminosity Gaming is how we're going to start off the day. I'm Tom Battinger, and joining me is going to be Anatoly Alexeyev. How you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm going to be excited to see this matchup up against Pittsburgh Knights. Luminosity struggling a little bit so far, 0-4. Pittsburgh Knights, good standings thus far at 4-2.
Exactly. Some good stuff coming out here as far as what we've been able to see from kind of both sides. Pittsburgh Knights a little bit more obviously successful. Luminosity has been clawing at trying to find something. -9, meaning that they have found some victories here and there, a little bit better than Trifecta. But as I said, an uphill battle for them versus Pittsburgh Knights.
Yeah, Luminosity are not out of the equation quite yet. If they were to win everything, that they could still make it.
So watching what's going to be happening here with Pittsburgh 4-2, they've been moderately successful. In comparison to what I think people have expected. Their roster on paper, very, very strong, but at the end of the day, just hasn't been able to really execute the way people have expected. Dignitas, of course, completely undefeated. We'll see them play tomorrow. And then Renegades, another team to keep an eye on. They have only really played a handful of times, and they've only really won a handful of times, coming in late to the league. So we'll see how those guys do a little bit later on.
Yeah, Renegades, a strong team in their own right. Next Friday, or tomorrow rather, it's going to be Pittsburgh Knights up against Renegades. Excited for that one.
Obviously, a little bit of an issue here with Anatoly, but I swear he's saying the good stuff. So when we come down to it, I'm going to be looking at Luminosity, and the big headline is that they have switched things up. Things haven't been working out here for Luminosity lately, and because of that, they've moved roles. Oceans, previously in the middle lane, is going to shift over into the Hunter role, and that Hunter role previously held down will move over there, and so we'll see Oceans go head-to-head versus Vote this time around, which should be an interesting shakeup.
In Season 3, with Team Allegiance, Oceans making that debut, so no stranger to the ADC role. Good to have my voice back as well. But yeah, this is no stranger to the ADC role. I'm excited to see what Oceans brings out because he could still technically play mages in that long lane. There's been a meta developing recently where you're sticking hunters in the mid, mages in that long lane, Poseidons, Nuas from time to time. We could still see the same kind of gods coming out of Oceans.
Absolutely. When it comes down to this switch, I'm interested to see why. Is it a god pool related thing? Is it a strategy thing? I'm unsure. I think a lot of people are sitting at home going, something had to have happened, so I'm glad to see a change at all go the way of Luminosity, because as I said, they've struggled to really find their footing. They've won some games here and there. They almost beat Barracuda in the squad, but almost doesn't wind up putting a W in your column. So here, I'm glad to see something change, but is this the change?
They've also taken maps against other teams like Dignitas before, E-United, finding victories against those teams. There's signs of life from Luminosity where they have the early game success, but they can't always translate it consistently in a best-of-5 set. Having to win 3 games out of the 5 is not in Luminosity's strong wheelhouse yet.
Certainly an uphill battle for them, and it's troublesome as they go up against the Pittsburgh Knights, or had they have gone up against the Pittsburgh Knights without a change. I think making this swap up here is kind of them looking towards this situation, going, all right, well, we see what Pittsburgh Knights have been able to do. Maybe this switch around as far as their positions are concerned will be enough to really bring home the bacon.
And they're feeling really confident and feeling really cute today, coming in today with all 5 matching track pants. They all went to the mall. They got their track pants together. They're feeling really cute.
Yep, that's a big part of it. We'll see if that impacts their gameplay. So you were talking about Oceans really, understanding the hunter position and having been there before. What can you say about his previous play here?
I think that his previous play in the mid role has been not necessarily the highlight player. I think Joshy was kind of that highlight player in the late game team fights. It's normally either the mid player or the hunter player.
Sure.
So it's just kind of take your turn of who's going to go at it. So we could still potentially see Joshy kind of pop off in the late game from that mid role.
Well, Joshy moving over to the mid lane, that's somebody new that the molluskk has to work with. We'll see if he touches on that. Standing by is molluskk.
All right, standing by with molluskk, the jungler for Luminosity. First of all, molluskk, let's talk about the big news. You've got a role swap going on. Joshy from ADC to mid, Oceans over to a little bit further from you now. Was it just that you wanted to sit next to Joshy?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I think that was the dominant reason. But outside of that, Joshy brings a little bit more communication than Oceans does on a consistent basis, at least. Not to say that Oceans doesn't communicate, but we just felt that would be more valuable in mid, and we also felt like we needed a bit of a shakeup. So.
Has it been working for you well in scrims? I mean, obviously it hasn't gone poorly because you're doing it, but have you seen a big improvement from it?
I'd say so, yeah. I'd say we're still going through the adjustment period, but we're going to play today and see how it goes.
It's a big week for you guys, not just Pittsburgh Knights today, but you got a tough game tomorrow as well. Is it hard to focus on one opponent when you know you've got really tough ones back-to-back?
A little bit. You don't really want to dedicate too much time to just one team because you play the other team the next day. But we're just going to focus on prepping for Rival tomorrow. We prepped for PK today, so we'll take it like that.
What's some of the prep that you've had for PK? What are some of the things you've noticed that you think that you can do well against?
Looking at their picks and bans, abusing some of the picks that they play in mid, especially with the Jorm, but we'll see.
We will see indeed. Molluskk, thank you very much. Good luck, and throw it back to you guys on the desk.
Thanks a lot there, Ryan. Good information coming out from Molluskk, kind of shedding some light onto why we see the switch up. You know, I'd said maybe it's a Knights specific thing here. Molluskk just kind of saying, well, the communication very valuable in that mid lane, and Joshy, the more consistent communicator.
The mid-jungle synergy, you're constantly spending time with your mid player trying to share mid camps, maybe split oracles together, assist the mid laner doing the red buff. So it makes sense when you're trying to organize a gank even potentially, exploiting the mid player. And if you have somebody that's communicating more, and he even said it, that not that Oceans wasn't communicating, but Joshy communicates a little bit more. So there could be more execution, more highlight plays from LG today.
You heard what Molluskk was talking about. He mentioned looking towards the Knights and their picks, and that's really where he's trying to kind of fix things and make big strides. Mentioned the Yorm mid. I'm going to focus over there on that side lane because Vote has somebody new to go up against. That said, Vote really doesn't have an issue with that. Vote one of the more standout hunters when it comes down to just understanding the matchups and really knowing how to play the game at an arm's length. He's going to be safe until it's time to go into the team fights and take care of business.
He's going to be aggressive, I think, from the get-go. He might be left alone depending on what EmilZy wants to do, and that's something that Oceans has to keep in mind during picks and bans. If he wants to play aggressive with Vote, go for something like the on her maybe to match that, or if he's going to look to play a little bit passive and try to prioritize the Jing way and look for the PvE farm instead.
Yeah, that's what we've seen pretty much as of late for Vote, so I think that could be the thought process, although of course, you know, as you said, Vote, formerly known as NBK, the natural born killer. He might be after the new position swap here for LG and look for those individual kills. Some impressive numbers here in Season 6 for the Scottish Hunter. He's really kind of stepped into himself here. This Knight squad, as I said, they've had their struggles. They're not undefeated, but this is still one of the perennial teams that we've got here in the league.
Definitely. Only losing to Rival and Dignitas thus far. You can't be too mad about that if you're the Pittsburgh Knights. And all their victories, they haven't dropped a game in those victories. It has been 3-0 clean sweeps up against Space Station Gaming, SK Trifecta, and also impressively E United finding a sweep there.
Yeah, that was an interesting matchup for sure. So what does that say about the team?
I think that they're just so consistent. They're very hard to find a weakness and exploit it. It's got to be like a really long fought battle up against Pittsburgh Knights. They bring so many different varieties to the table between the God Pool from Zeros, between the aggressive nature of Deathwalker, adapting, deciding where he wants to gank. You can never really predict where Pittsburgh Knights is going to strike at.
That's a big deal, the unpredictability, because on one hand, I feel like adapting is a relatively predictable jungler in the sense that you know the characters that he's going to play, you generally know his gameplay style, but the teammates around him, I love that you brought up Zeros, the pick selection is completely out of everywhere. I mean, he's going to play the Morgan at times, and then he's going to play the Jormungandr middle lane. We've seen some really oddball stuff, but then again, we've also seen the standard. Now that's what's scary. Knights can beat you either way.
That's right. The Zeus coming out of Zeros. He doesn't really play too many hunters is the one thing that I've noticed out of Zeros compared to every other mid player.
Sure.
So that's something that maybe LG could lean on. Maybe have Joshy play a hunter in mid, get that early pressure, look for some red buff invades.
Here's Zeros on that middle lane, Jormungandr. Real interesting stuff. One of the originators, well, the originator. We've seen some other players kind of go with that, whether it's in the Pro League, minor league, even the console side of things has been trying out the Jormungandr mid. So certainly something to look at as far as when you're talking about how Pittsburgh Knights wins the games. Creativity has to come up as well.
The thing about Zeros and playing Jormungandr is when I was doing my interview with him during SMITE Memoirs, it was him talking about making the biggest impact in the game from the mid position. So that's why he's been leaning on the Morrigan for so long since that Season 4 introduction. And then also now he's found a new god to do that with Jormungandr.
Jormungandr supposed to be a Guardian, and standing by, we've got the Guardian for Pittsburgh Knights, EmilZy and Aggro.
All right, standing by with EmilZy, the support for PK. First of all, EmilZy, happy belated birthday, just turned 19. What'd you guys do to celebrate?
Well, we played some scrims, you know. Ooh. Played some more SMITE, and then we went out to eat at Stony River, so it's a lovely day. Got some cake. I liked it.
Good. Glad to hear it. What have you seen from you guys in scrims? Because I feel like you guys just are a team that really focus on your own play and kind of do your own style. Do you think that you've been putting it together pretty recently?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've gotten like a pretty good grasp of the meta, and then like the meta beyond that and beyond that as well. So I feel like we're a bit ahead when it comes to that. And in a game like today, when we're playing LG, you don't ever know what they're gonna pick and play and stuff. So you just kind of gotta draft what you think is good and then hope and pray, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, LG, I mean, you have no idea where not only are they going to pick, but where they might end up starting. Are these the hardest types of teams to prepare for?
I guess in a sense, it's the hardest kind of team to prepare for because you don't really know. Like, you just kind of got to go with the flow and ban whatever you feel like they could abuse. But I think you never know. Like, it's like after for game one, you'll have a pretty good understanding, and hopefully they don't have some cheese prepared for game one.
They've been really good in game ones. They've won almost every single game one of their sets. You feeling confident today? What you got?
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty confident. I think hopefully we're going to bring out the Stony River comp in game one. And if that fails, we always have the Texas melt down the back pocket. So, yeah, I feel pretty confident.
Stony River comp game one. Texas melt is the backup. Watch out for that. Throw it back to you guys on the desk.
Thanks a lot, guys. EmilZy, sharing the playbook.
I'm pretty sure that's something you can order from Waffle House, the Texas melt.
It just might be. Certainly something to chat. Certainly food for thought as far as I'm concerned. Pittsburgh Knights, though, I think that EmilZy kind of really said some interesting stuff as far as, like, look, man, preparing for a team like this, what the hell do you want me to do?
Yeah.
They're going to play weird stuff. They're going to put weird people in weird positions. So we're going to go out and play our own game.
It doesn't surprise me, the fact that they don't know what LG is going to pick. Picking the Ganesh Zeus in a meta where no one really played the Ganesh mostly, so that could be something that they ban away against LG because the Ganesh really enables the Zeus to pop off.
Sure.
But knowing that the lane swap happens, I'm not sure how much Zeus Joshy has had practice with, so maybe he's just going to stick to the Hunters. You never really know with LG.
That's certainly interesting. Let's get to it. Picks and bans here for game number one. We'll jump right in. Pittsburgh Knights on the left side, of course. They've got the first pick and the first ban. Luminosity Gaming on the other. They'll respond with 2. And so as we get underway, the bans that we've seen recently, I think they've shifted a lot. I think some of the must-ban characters have kind of fallen down a peg. And right there you see, it's a Muzen Cup.
AMC very obnoxious to deal with in the mid role. Not necessarily dual lane, but if you're going to be playing something more towards the mid to late game from the mid position, you don't want to deal with an Muzen Cobb in the early game. You're going to get out pressured, out cleared. You might lose mid camps, and worst case comes to worst, lose your red buff.
That's a big deal. And so got to watch out for that burst damage, knowing that there's a hunter in the mid lane, or a hunter player rather. Got to be careful and think about that God pool. Merlin banned out here by Luminosity, very standard. And the King Arthur from Pittsburgh Knights, also rather standard. So Luminosity back on the clock. Xaliea giving it a stretch.
I think Pittsburgh Knights banning away the Arthur because they want to lean on a priority solo pick. And that priority pick probably going to be the Achilles.
The Achilles.
So if LG doesn't ban it here, I expect PK to snap pick that. But then you also got to worry about fineokay potentially. Freya has been risen in popularity, so that could be an issue. There's a lot of flexibility with where you can go in that first pick. Or LG could just kind of leave all 3 open, allow PK to get 1, and then pick up the next 2.
I think Jormungandr also belongs in that conversation. Pittsburgh Knights have been playing him to great success. Adapting early morning for the young man out of Sweden. We'll see how he deals, if he's waking up or if he'll be groggy on the match. The Achilles ban here from LG. I like that. I approve of that. I think it's almost the right ban in a world where you can rarely say that.
Sure, yeah, either you leave the Achilles open, then you take the Jormungandr for yourselves, because you know for sure PK was going for this Jorm pick.
Exactly.
Or the Achilles. But they can't get both, so they at least strip away the Achilles. A lot of burst damage. You don't want to necessarily deal with all those fatal strikes, and that means that LG have an answer for the Jormungandr.
Mid lane, Raijin on the clock here. CerCat locked in. I like that choice as well. Luminosity has succeeded a little bit more on early game success by way of the molluskk, and I think enabling him, giving him the CerCat, letting their jungler see if he can get some of that. Because recently, molluskk has not been bringing it. They started off the season with a hot jungler and not really getting it any longer. CerCat and Erlang Shen paired up.
And it could also be KikiSoCheeky, and it could be molluskk playing the Erlang Shen. You never really know. In fact, like, it could be also Xaliea playing the Erlang Shen solo lane. So mollusk's picks not necessarily set in stone quite yet, but picking the CerCat and Erlang Shen from Luminosity this early in the draft, PK has some cripple options that they can lean on. Potentially Ares, the RDO is another factor, but not getting it quite yet.
Jing Wei here, selected by Pittsburgh Knights. I love this choice, mainly because of the Erlang Shen. If she gets knocked up, she can easily skirt her way out of there with the agility. And the Osiris. This is one of the more pressure picks in the solo lane. This is one of the characters that I think kind of came out of nowhere and has just been dominant in that short side.
Listen, Osiris is never going to fall out of favor in that solo lane. You have a 5-second poke with your Sickle Strike, a 10-second poke with your Spirit Flail. Your passive, giving you 16% physical damage mitigation, helps you survive against either CerCat or Erlang Shen jungle ganks. So you're covering really good options. You also have 8% magical once it comes to the late game mitigations. So it's a safe pick, it's aggressive, it covers all options. You get lane pressure with your basic attack cleaves. You translate that into Totem of Coups for some early momentum.
Poseidon locked in by LG. Mid lane choice, perhaps. Ocean's previously the mid laner, now the carry. So we'll see how that one works out. If we do see the weird lane swap, if Poseidon winds up on that side of the map or stays in the mid lane piloted by Joshy, we'll certainly keep our eyes and ears open. Second ban phase here. LG looking and adapting, taking away the Pele. He's played her lately.
I like the Poseidon pick from LG because it covers two different things. Number one, it doesn't allow PK to get it, even though it might be Jormungandr mid, because you don't want to deal with the cripples from your own side. So this enables CerCat and Erlang Shen to be a little bit more loose, a little bit more free. And then the second thing is that Poseidon can probably blow up Jormungandr even while he's channeling up that World Serpent with the Kraken. Yeah, you're not going to be able to knock him up, but that 10% extra damage with the Daze effect helps the Kraken, if anything.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to just pile damage on top of it on a character that already provides a ton of it. Pittsburgh Knights spanning out Aphrodite, one of the characters recently that's gotten a little bit of love, no pun intended. And then also one of Kiki's favorite characters, one of Xalia's favorite characters, to be fair. A lot of players on this LG team have played Aphrodite in the past to great success. And so Pittsburgh Knights doing their history homework here and really making sure that God pool banned out. Another powerful woman, Freya, will be taken away by Pittsburgh Knights. LG focusing instead on the jungle.
I want to see a Terra locked in from LG. They can flex that in solo, in the support role, depending on where they want to go. It's a good 3-on-3 between Poseidon, Terra, and then insert jungler here of CerCat or Erlang Shen. So it just kind of works out if they're looking to put pressure onto Zeus' Jormungandr that is a threat in that mid to late game. And if you can get that early game pressure with the ganks, that's a way that LG can sneak some victories.
Certainly a thought process. Jormungandr has been pretty volatile, but the early game, not exactly where he kind of shines. You need all those points and the abilities in order to make that second one really hit hard, all the pools, etc., etc., etc.
And all the items as well. You need the scaling, the little bit of penetration because of all the ticks that he has between the basic attacks and those pools that just tick over time.
So locked in here for LG. Not a character a lot of people love right now.
No, definitely not, but it was played a little bit by Funballer once Renegades did pop up. So this still actually doesn't tell me if this is soul dual lane or not, because Poseidon could also be going to Oceans in that long lane if he really wants to.
Certainly possible. We'll keep our mind open here. Before I said we'll keep our eyes open, now we just got to be open-minded. Figure out where everything's going to go.
And that's something that PK were talking about during the interview.
Yep.
EmilZy was like, yeah, we don't really know what LG is going to come at us with, so we just got to be prepared for everything. And with LG finding victories, or one-game victories over E United, Dignitas, and Space Station Gaming, it wouldn't surprise me if LG squeezed away a win from PK today.
I mean, with you know, it's interesting the way you said that, because I think we look at Pittsburgh Knights draft, and this is as one-size-fits-all as you can kind of get. Jormungandr will always be able to do what his job is, get behind the enemy line. Jingwei, one of the safest carries. Anybody's going to push her out or knock her up, she can escape. Osiris, you mentioned, kind of evergreen in that solo lane. And so a lot of these Pittsburgh Knights choices have been with that in mind, going, all right, LG, we don't know where or what you're picking, just we're going to pick some good stuff, and we're going to play it.
And if that Robin does get locked in, that's another safe pick that covers all options. You can easily escape the clutches of the Poseidon. It's very difficult to actually put any combination of CCs against the Robin.
The Fafnir selection here by Pittsburgh Knights, I think a very, very good call. This would have been pretty devastating to have Coerce on the side of LG, all along Poseidon and Soul with a little bit of help from their friends. That could be nuts. The Neath highlighted here, though.
I'm confused if that is actually going to be a Neath lock-in, though. Okay.
If that was a Neath, I think we'd see the Erlang Shen in the solo lane, which has been a while since we've seen Erlang Shen in the solo lane.
If it was Neath locked in, maybe it would have been Neath solo lane, trying to get that World Weaver spread across Poseidon, mid, Soul, duo lane, Circuit, or Erlang Shen flex in between support or jungle. But
sure.
Terra makes more sense because it's Xaliea in the
Right.
solo lane. He loves the Terra. I'm expecting that to be the case. Kiki, a little bit more rambunctious in the early game, trying to help his teammates. So I'm expecting him to be piloting either the Circuit or the Erlang Shen, setting up Oceans in the mid.
Well, it's going to be the Earth Mom. Terra shows up, and it's the last pick for LG. Will provide a whole bunch of control. I like this draft from LG. And I'm going to go back to that word I just said, control.
Yeah.
Circuit, Erlang Shen, Terra, they're going to line players up. Poseidon brings a ton of control as well. I think this Luminosity draft is really nice. The only thing that I am a little bit worried about is potential frontline or lack thereof.
Yeah, that could be an issue, but I think that LG, if they can get off rolling early game, they could really start abusing this Jormungandr.
We'll see if it works. Pittsburgh Knights, Luminosity Gaming with their position switch. Game number 1. We'll see how it goes.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Totally. LG now have a lot to prove coming into this matchup. Like you said, they did make that swap with Oceans and Joshy, switching between mid and Hunter. We'll see how well that works. Though, for what it's worth, I don't know if they're going to be playing anything particularly different than what they normally played anyway, right? With the Soul and Poseidon locked in. Obviously, Jormungandr first picked for zeros in the middle lane based on this composition as well. No big surprises there. So, a lot riding, I feel like, on this Terra and all this magic damage if they want to beat PK.
I think it's really going to come down to the timing of those Terra's blessings, as well as the Circuit last breaths could be really important control moments for Luminosity, but I just think that Robin selection for adapting could not have been better suited for this composition because he has so much dive potential now into the Poseidon and into the Soul.
Right, and so much safety into the Kraken. And we were thinking that it might even be an Awilish pickup here, with obviously all the knockups from the Jormungandr, with already having the Jingwei, you can get some knockups off the Persistent Gust. You add the Awilish to that, and into the Circuit, it could really devastate that matchup. Instead, though, they go with this Robin, that might have been the better pick. I mean, how is Joshy going to breathe easy now? Again, because it's Joshy playing the Poseidon in the duo lane. How is he going to breathe easy with a Robin he has to worry about?
Well, on the bright side for Joshy, Poseidon does have relatively safe lane clear early on, and I don't think that we can really expect to see adapting, looking for heavy kill potential, levels 1 through 4. I think we're probably going to see a little bit more aggression from him as soon as that Mystic Rush comes online. So as long as Joshy is just smart with his map awareness, I think he might be okay.
Yeah, I think he might be okay too, as Deathwalker moves immediately over towards the speed buff to try and make sure that molluskk can't grab this one easily. molluskk, though, is able to defend it, but now can he make it out of here with his life now that EmilZy has shown up as well? First blood for the Fafnir. molluskk goes down, and a tough start already for LG. Vote, though, is left to his own devices in dual lane up against Kiki's aggressive Erlang, but I think he's A-okay. That's a big start for PK.
Well, Xaliea is going to inevitably lose his blue buff off of that aggressive rotation from EmilZy, but molluskk, I understand the greed in a sense, but sometimes you just got to cut your losses a little bit sooner, and I think he should have just let that speed buff go the way of Deathwalker.
I think so too, and I kind of get a little bit where he was coming from there, Taco, because Deathbane is such good confirm in the early game. It's hard to out-secure the Circuit there, but I don't think securing the buff was the problem. I mean, clearly he got it. It's just that once you use Deathbane there, I don't know how you get away from the Osiris. Even with EmilZy there, who only needs one hammer to essentially guarantee your death. I like that he at least made sure he got the buff. That is some farm for him, but that spill falling early, it really hurts.
It also keeps Joshy on track, so it's not entirely awful for molluskk to die there, because without that buff secured, Joshy doesn't hit level 2 at the same time as Zeros in mid, although Joshy has fallen just a little bit behind Zeros, sitting at level 2 still, while Zeros has hit 3, but I don't imagine this to affect the Poseidon too heavily. I think I'm more interested to see how Luminosity responds, because Pittsburgh Knights at least have track of that speed buff timer.
Right.
And I would definitely expect them to pay another visit.
Well, if I'm LG, I don't take that initial death for molluskk too hard. They definitely still have some early presence in this game around this Erlang Shen, around this Circuit, and if they can fight near Joshy as well on this Poseidon, I don't think you let that one death where they kind of got that early invade slow you down if you're LG, because this composition might run into some troubles later on. I mean, they might be too reliant on magical damage from Joshy and from Oceans that Knights can build around that in response if they don't get off to a good start.
It's a possibility, but I think that's also where Xaliea is going to start factoring in with this Terra, because Terra's Blessing can more than compensate for lack of damage. I mean, she brings a ton of it as is as soon as she hits 4, so I really just need to see Xaliea with how efficiently he can time that Terra ultimate and whether or not he's actually going to be able to catch an impact.
For a moment, LG weren't going to let that early start slow them down. They came for the red buff invade, but unfortunately, Taco, at least for LG, that did not quite work out. Zeros ends up defending the buff, and they move right on back. But like you said, later on in the game, hopefully they can use this Terra to potentially make up for some deficits they might have in damage. Because, yeah, molluskk is on the Circuit, and that is going to be good damage, it is going to be relevant, but that's about it. I don't know if it's enough to deter PK, especially Deathwalker and EmilZy, from stacking up some magic defense and trying to slow down Joshy and Oceans.
I will say, it is pretty tough trying to bank everything into Kraken as being the ultimate form of burst damage.
Right.
I actually think that Luminosity are intending to use this Poseidon as more of a utility-based style of play as opposed to just having all emphasis on that Kraken, because if the Kraken doesn't connect, hold that thought though, Vote in a little bit of trouble, going to actually try to dash away, but Kiki knows as well as anybody else, you go for a knock-up against Jing Wei, she's dashing right on out of there.
Yeah, it just ain't going to work. Unfortunately, I wonder if Mink might even be better in that situation, but could not quite lock down Vote, and Vote remains calm, holds onto the beat, it's A-okay. In fact, he's gone right into the Ninja Tabi to get started in this lane. That's going to help him out tremendously in terms of being able to escape if there is more pressure from Kiki, to be able to box a little bit easier up against the Soul, who's very likely not going to be stacking anyway. This is a good pickup here from Vote, and clearly a good response in that duel.
Anytime there's an aggressive support on the enemy team, I think that Vote just understands he needs to factor for survivability more so than anything else, and I think
Sure.
with Jing Wei, that is pretty safe to go for, because I don't think that molluskk is going to have nearly as many opportunities now, since Vote has the mobility to stay safe.
Yeah, and how are you going to lock down the Jormungand? And now that Zeros has the ultimate, as long as he's patient with it, that is a get-out-of-jail-free card and a half in it, isn't it? Because you can also do some damage for it. So molluskk options might be getting a bit limited right now to where he can go. We'll see what his targets will be as Deathwalker moves in aggressively, trying to force out molluskk. But looks like he wasn't able to get there in time, and LG defend the buff.
Ocean's, though, a little bit of a boxing match with Vote, seemingly getting the better end of this trade as well. It's hard to box into a Soul when she's got that heat passive stacking up, but Vote's already cleared out the creep wave, so instead he'll look towards Luminosity's red buff, which, by the way, no one's at to defend.
Vote is able to get the buff, but molluskk is nearby. Airstrike, what a good call from Vote. He's got to get out of there quick. Even jumps away from Kiki, and now he has Zeros to play defense. That was 9 turns Blessing. Looks like it didn't actually go off. He tried to get the taunt, but was interrupted by Zeros.
A nice knock up there from Zeros as well to ensure the safety of his Hunter. Vote without an airstrike would have been the best opportunity for Luminosity so far to try and follow it up for a pick, but that's just going to end up being another pipe dream here for LG as they continue to try and make up for molluskk early death. But there's only been one death that's taken place so far, Finch, and yet Luminosity, or I should say Pittsburgh Knights, have already established nearly a 2,000 gold lead.
It's very impressive what they've done, because for the most part, what they've done is just played carefully around some of the aggression from LG. I know that there's 0 kills on the board, but we don't have a stat for like failed ganks or opportunities missed or something like that. And LG has looked several times to try and catch out PK in this early game, and the Knights have just responded correctly every single time. This is not an LG team that came in without a plan. They just haven't been able to execute. And Knights have found opportunities to invade whilst avoiding the aggression from LG. This has been a really efficient early game from them so far.
I think it's just tough on molluskk because he doesn't really have anything to work with since he got picked for First Blood at level 1 too, especially level 1, because Adapting just spent his time doing the standard jungle route. Kiki could be in a spot of trouble here off the solo side, retreating into the safety of his tier 2 tower, but Pittsburgh Knights, they want Luminosity's blue buff.
Yeah, this is all about the buff right now. As Pittsburgh Knights move in, unable to actually strip away the buff, Xaliea does a good job defending and is able to grab it back up. So that's still good. If the Knights are able to get in, cleanly strip the buff and get back out, then that's how that lead continues to expand. But this time, though, LG were able to get close enough.
Vote, though, looked as if he wanted to try and steal Luminosity's red buff yet again, but 4 members from Lumi hovering this duo side of the map, and even Vote understands on the Jing way, it's just not worth the risk. He'll fall back to his own lane, but Kiki a little bit pushed up.
He's got some backup coming, though, in the form of Joshy, and he has the Whirlpool there. Kraken does come through as well, but EmilZy ends up shrugging that one off in Draconic Corruption. It's KikiSoCheeky who goes down first. 2 kills now on the board for PK as they catch Kiki out and isolate him there in the jungle.
I think Joshy just took too long to crack it. You need to be executing immediately. You're not going to find many opportunities against this Pittsburgh Knights squad. And I definitely think that that was Joshy dropping the ball a little bit there, not opting to just drop the Kraken when Kiki started going in.
And Kiki certainly needed the backup, and it just wasn't there. Another critical pick for Pittsburgh Knights as they start to slowly pull away. You know what else has caught my eye here, though, Taka, that I want your thoughts on? Pythag's first piece here, or pickup for Xaliea on this Terra in the solo lane. I mean, that is very, very different from what we normally see.
But there is a ton of magical base DPS for Luminosity.
That's true. It's almost entirely that.
It's Poseidon, it's Soul, and it's a Terra. And I think that this is just Xaliea trying to play to Luminosity's current strengths, and it's definitely going to be coming off the back of this magical carry damage.
And I agree with you that it's not a bad item in this matchup at all, and it's one we have seen some of our tanks kind of sliding into their builds, but this must mean Xaliea wants to be a part of the fight soon, right? Or else it's something you could just pick up a little bit later. He wouldn't have to get it right now. Maybe it gives him some sustain in lane 2 to match like Glad Shield or something like that. Like, what? I don't know why he's going for it so early.
Well, it's a little bit awkward, I think, since his direct matchup is with Deathwalker on the Osiris, so Xaliea won't have too many protections there, but he is dealing, I think, a decent amount of damage in return to possibly, you know, deter Deathwalker from wanting to actually look for the poke exchanges against Xaliea. I would probably favor the Terra there because she has the monolith to root Deathwalker in place should he step up, and I don't think Deathwalker wants to just be expending that Lord of the Afterlife willy-nilly.
I think so too. Very interesting. We'll have to keep our eye on Xaliea as he's now gone to the pen boots. Clearly, there will be some damage coming out from this Terra as Zeros immediately uses the ultimate, and this is why life has been so difficult for LG. Who's the target that you want to pick? Vote is so safe on this Jing Wei. Zeros can just ult away at any time. Adapting with the overhead kick's not a good target either. EmilZy maybe is one, but even Draconic Corruption and the extra leap buys him a lot of time in most situations. I don't think they have a good target.
Not throughout the duration of the laning phase. I think Luminosity should just continue trying to farm as best they can and look for their opportunities once the team fights actually start breaking out. Pittsburgh Knights have been aggressive. Pittsburgh Knights have been frequently looking for invades and usually coming out on top, just like Vote did, stripping away Ocean's purple buff, but Vote could now be in a little bit of trouble. Agility's already been used, but Ocean's unable to stay pushing up. And Luminosity, in fact, taking the Pyromancer as a response.
That's a great pickup for them to recognize they had a little bit of time. That was with adapting on this side of the map, too. So the Knights just must not have recognized that that was going down. A sneak away from LG they critically need. Though I am a bit surprised that Vote was coming out a little bit worse in that engage on the left-hand side, you pointed out. He's got a nice lead over Oceans, about a level and a half or so. He was 12 when Oceans was 10 a moment ago. But still, was running away in the last fight and couldn't capitalize.
Something else I want to point out, though, is the prioritization of early game anti-heal from the Pittsburgh Knights. It looks like they're not trying to take any chances, but Deathwalker might have pushed up a little bit too far. molluskk might have finally found his target.
That's so interesting. I would never have said that the Osiris was the one, but when Xaliea is building damage, then go ahead and start the fight. But on the other side, Pittsburgh Knights don't want to be outdone. Zero's in the squad. Lockdown KikiSoCheeky support for solo laner. But Pittsburgh Knights on the back end find themselves a buff invade, red buff, heading over to the Jormungandr.
And one more time, Pittsburgh Knights just one up what Luminosity managed to accomplish off of a nice pick in the solo lane onto Deathwalker, but there's no blue buff invade. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh Knights, they get mid lane pressure. They force, I think, Luminosity to start being a little bit more attentive towards this red buff, because it's not the first time that Luminosity has lost their own red buff. I think that's about the third successful invade now from Pittsburgh Knights, and the experience gaps are already starting to become fairly evident between Zeros and Joshy.
That is going to become a problem for LG, and become is a disservice. It's already a problem, as they can't gank him, and you just saw the damage he was able to output in that last fight too, so clearly this Jormungandr is going to be hard to deal with. But you were right, I think, to point out this early focus on the anti-heal from Pittsburgh Knights, and I think this makes some sense. I mean, there's going to be great healing from the Terra, there's self-healing for Oceans and for Kiki as well. You got to cut that down, and right away Brawlers and Divine Ruin to make sure that they're not going to be able to build it. I think this is good to prioritize it early.
And on top of that, Pittsburgh Knights, when you're already in control of a match, one of the best ways to keep a team suppressed is anti-heal. I mean,
right.
The fact that Luminosity are already kind of struggling, I think, to match damage for damage in these mini skirmishes around mid lane says a lot, but it's going to be 10 times worse when the little bits of sustain that might have actually been enough to turn things back into Luminosity's favor just aren't going to be available.
LG should still have some good sustain available for them, but mitigated certainly by the Knights. As so far, just about everything Pittsburgh has tried has worked. The only thing LG have done successfully is invade onto Deathwalker as Kiki moves in aggressively, but Zeros goes into his ultimate, drops in on Joshy. But the way the rest of the team positions makes he thinks he's not all in committing. In fact, molluskk has his back interrupted because Jormungandr drops down between the last point, the point where he just goes underneath the ground and does some extra damage there, is able to interrupt the back there from molluskk.
Meanwhile, in solo lane, Xaliea will lose his blue buff to a successful lane by Deathwalker, but Luminosity, they backed off, and Pittsburgh Knights are going to take that gold and take it straight to the Gold Fury.
They absolutely should. Knights grabbed the Gold Fury. LG either didn't know or just couldn't get there in time. They did disengage on the back of that last little small skirmish, so that was plenty of time. This could be trouble, though, for Vote. He has the beads available immediately into the airstrike, and he's out of there. I mean, molluskk just can't lock him down long enough. He's had that same problem all game.
But Oceans, when left alone, might be able to bring down this T1 tower as a response to Luminosity. If he gets another wave in there, for sure. Adapting, though, going to pay himself a visit to this duo lane and ensure that Luminosity essentially get nothing.
That was good, at least from adapting to stop them from grabbing that tier 2. Soul, with that heat built up, has a ton of potential to burn down the objectives, but adapting puts a stop to that. Though at the very least, we did see molluskk grab the purification beads from Vote and the ultimate. As soon as he can, he needs to loop back around and see if he can maybe punish this Jing Wei, because with rage built up and free farming, things could get scary. Kraken, though, lands onto EmilZy. Might be too much water. He gets the shell off too, but couldn't leap, and Oceans finds a much-needed kill.
Nearly got the leap off in time, though. It was a little scary if I'm Luminosity watching this Fafnir that might have managed to escape otherwise, but I think that that was a decent damage check. It lets EmilZy know that he can't afford to get caught out because the Kraken will at least interrupt him long enough. I think it was the staggering of the crowd-controlled knockups from Luminosity that prevented EmilZy from being able to utilize that Draconic form a little bit sooner. And if Lumi can continuously stack their CC in that manner, then I can definitely see where they might be able to overturn Pittsburgh Knights' aggression.
Xaliea trying to play aggressive, but adapting. Deathwalker don't want to make things easy for him. He has to fall back to the tower low on mana. molluskk wants to defend the blue buff and does so successfully. So instead, they'll just trade blows here in the jungle. I highlighted that Vote's already going to this early rage, Taco. I think this is actually going to be a really strong pickup because really LG are not going to be that tanky this game, especially with Xaliea kind of cheating into damage a little bit. I think he could blow this team up if he leans into it more.
It's not very often that hunters get away with crit-oriented builds in Season 6. There's been definitely a lot more priority given towards attack speed and penetration, shred-based builds, but I'm right there with you, Finch. I think that Vote might actually get away with murder on this one if he is able to successfully free cast from the back line. Granted, he still needs to be protected in order to get those autos off, but it's hard to say that he won't be when Pittsburgh Knights is his squad.
Vote going in aggressively with the agility, but Ocean's not doing too bad in this trade with its Evaporate form, so Vote will fall back. No more will come from that. But we'll see where it is that Vote wants to go with the build. You can build Rage by itself, I feel like, on Jing and it's still fine because the explosive bolts, you can get so much value out of it. But if he leans more into crit, that could be a problem for LG. It's now Pyromancer under siege. And with this 3-man grouping from LG in mid, I don't think they know this is happening. That's Pyromancer for free.
By the time Luminosity get a chance to respond, it'll be way too late. All 3 members grouped up in mid lane, though. Well, Molluskk is going to be made the target, in fact, by Zeros. Worldworm just making his debut. And Zeros, I don't blame him for being so loose with the Dorming-Under ultimate. It's up so often for him, it feels like, because Luminosity are just struggling to find points to be aggressive against Zeros when that ult is on cooldown.
Yeah, I kind of am a little bit worried about him being so liberal with the ultimate. But at this point in the game, he'll probably be okay. But with that ultimate down, I mean, Jormungandr can be pretty vulnerable. Sure, you can't, like, displace him, but he gets dazed, takes all that extra damage, and you can kind of blow him up if you can fight through those slows.
Only time will tell whether or not Zeros ever actually gets punished for it after the fact, but touching back on that Ocean's Vote itemization discussion with the Rage, I actually think that Ocean's had a really smart response by going for the Hasten Ring on Soul. It's a little bit unconventional nowadays, I think, to see magical ADCs opt for this item because oftentimes Telkines or Demonic Grip are more than enough damage that you'd rather have the raw DPS as opposed to the Fatalis effect with Hasten Ring. But I think when you're against a Jingwei who's prioritizing crit, you need as much mobility as possible because Ocean's nearly got the better end of Vote in that last 1v1. I think had there not been a creep wave there, we might have actually seen Vote possibly get soloed.
Ocean's in some trouble. There's that crit rearing its ugly head for Vote. Ocean's has to drop the Aegis as well in response to the Ultin from adapting, and that'll be enough from them on this dive. Ocean's now completely vulnerable the next time they come through. No beads or Aegis.
Does still have the Disapparate, however, but adapting the way he played that, really important that he held on to the Mystic Rush until after the full duration of the Disapparate had been expended. And that's just something that Oceans is going to have to keep in the back of his mind, that just because it seems like you're out doesn't mean you truly are. Pittsburgh Knights have a really strong dive composition, and it's not just going to be adapting, investing that Mystic Rush into the towers. I could definitely see Deathwalker and EmilZy following suit.
Kiki stunned down. That means big-time damage comes through from Vote. Kiki not particularly tanky either with the Wing Blade. So Vote, my man, this might be your game to lean into that crit. I'd love to see it, man. Those big explosive crit numbers are a whole lot of fun. But Kiki makes out of there either way. A teleport coming through from Deathwalker. They want to defend this Tier 1 tower, not going to let LG group up and find anything for free.
To be fair, though, Luminosity are actually getting the better end of Pittsburgh Knights when it comes to tower poke. Both towers in these side lanes are relatively low for Pittsburgh Knights, but now it's all about the Primal Fury, and PK don't seem like they have any intentions of resetting.
Remember we talked about Zeros in his ultimate. It's back up by now, never punished. Kraken, though, catches him before he can make it into the ultimate. That's big damage from Joshy, but into the World Serpent form he goes. Plenty of relevant damage and safety all at once. Deathwalker takes down Kiki first, next in trouble's Molluskk, but a good ultimate from Oceans doesn't save his life. Vote cuts him down 2-for-0 in favor of the Knights.
Just no actives for Oceans to utilize to try and help himself stay alive here. Adapting and to get cut off from pursuing Molluskk by a nice wall out of Xaliea. And still, I don't think that there's a chance that Molluskk is going to be able to strip away this Golferi. Instead, he tries to go for a red buff invade. And he's probably dead, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see a world where he makes it out of this one. Hunted down by adapting, a nice easy kill. But this is, I think, why Zeros loves this Jormungandr pick so much, Taco. Because he goes into the ultimate, my man Joshy eyes light up going, oh, he's standing still, this is a free ultimate for me. And even with him in critical HP, he's able to provide mage-like damage in that fight with those first 2 hits of the World Serpent ultimate, and then use the third one to disengage. And with everyone so low, the rest of his team is able to hit on the gas pedal and find 2, eventually 3 more kills. He plays his Jormungandr so well.
Luminosity's positioning was just a little bit too much inside of that choke point by their red buff. I think they needed to spread out more so that when Zeros went into that World Worm ultimate, it wouldn't actually catch multiple members, but I think I saw at least 2 or 3 of them get knocked up at the same time from the very first dive-in from Zeros.
Well, Fire Giant now on the table for Pittsburgh Knights. Deathwalker's holding it for now, but they finally agree to leash it. They've baited in LG into a fight they don't want to take. Tether lands on 2, but a good Kraken tickles Deathwalker. It's nowhere near enough. Boat gets Joshy, and Kiki in some trouble now as the knockups from the World Serpent come through. A double kill for Boat, who's making his voice heard. LG can't hang.
This is where things definitely start to get a little bit too scary now for Luminosity, Finch. Joshy and Kiki getting picked in the fashion that they did, that's an easy Fire Giant pull for PK, and Xalia's trying to play defense where he can. A nice CC stack, but the wall will interrupt Vote from getting those autos off initially, so Xalia's still alive.
Deathwalker can't make it over to the dual lane in time, so that's actually huge from Oceans that he found the tier 2 tower in left. That gets them 1,500 gold they really, really need to try and close things back up, but the rest of Pittsburgh Knights, undeterred, come right back to the FG. molluskk is the only person in a Chaos side jersey to play any defense. He blinks in, but Knights secure the objective cleanly, and molluskk has to leave.
I'm just not sure that it's enough for Luminosity to only really be dealing damage to the towers, Finch. I haven't really seen them find too many promising instances outside of one pick onto Deathwalker that was, I think, fairly clean from LG, and other than that, I don't know. It just seems like something is missing, and that something is definitely damage, but it's also coordination.
Yes, we haven't seen them be able to be on the same page. They did eventually kill EmilZy. That was the second kill they got. But remember the first time they tried to lock him down and Joshy wasn't quite on the same page as Kiki, and that setup wasn't all there lined up with the Kraken for the damage on the back end. And that, I think, is kind of what you're alluding to a little bit, that even when they have their moments, it does look like LG can quite execute on them. Vote, though, going to shred the tier 1 tower left. That goes down easy peasy. And with the Fire Giant buff, they can grab just about any tower they want. Tier 1 in mid goes down 2, and the Knights might even want to fight over here in left.
Ocean's got to be careful, though. Playing with fire, in a sense. Pittsburgh Knights are all grouped up and ready to push in against these T2s. Kiki, though, trying to target lock adapting, and Deathwalker in mid lane could get caught out.
This 4v2, though, might be the best they can find. But instead, LG gets spooked into wasting big ultimates. That's the Earth and Fury dropped with very little gained. 9 turns blessings on cooldown from Kiki as well. Now Pittsburgh Knights can move in with 5v3 ultimate advantage. In fact, Kiki nowhere near taking up to be the front line. In goes Deathwalker right to the back line, and Zeros would love to follow up. The stun lands on the 2 as well from the Tether, and Joshy no longer in the land of the living. Adapting finds that first kill. Tier 2 tower crumbles as well. And why not? They can move right in for this Phoenix.
Pittsburgh Knights have no intentions of slowing down now, not while they're out ahead. Adapting Specific Rush going to be a little bit off the mark. Maul is going to blink forward, but instantly gets smacked in the face for 500 off Boat's crits.
Just not going to work for him. Supernova comes through, but it looks like it hits molluskk. Of course it can't. He just blows up instead. Xaliea now in some trouble. Dash comes through, and that allows him to reposition back towards the Titan room. But, I mean, Pittsburgh Knights got what they wanted. Tier 2 and Phoenix all go down. They can even move over to the Phoenix in dual lane now, and LG starting to bend, starting to break under the pressure from the Knights. In comes Xaliea with the Earth and Fury that does hit just about everyone, and about as good of setup as you could want. And it's still not enough. At least Vote, though, comes down.
Ocean's gonna try and wiggle his way out of here. Separate form is good, and so is the Aegis. Vote will end up falling a little bit more than necessary, I think, from Pittsburgh Knights. Should have probably sent somebody back to at least go and get the minion wave. Might have been Pittsburgh Knights not paying the respects that Luminosity deserves, at least underneath their Phoenixes, with the soul damage.
And the backup coming from Terra's ultimate, too, so those two things together can make for a pretty strong defense. But I think all in all, even with Vote taking that spill, that's huge for the Knights. Yes, that should have been cleaner for them, but I mean, you can afford to have one little spill in the back end of a big play like that. Now they're here in defense on the Oni Fury instead of backing. LG had to be careful. I don't think they knew that they were going to be getting a full-on fight from the Knights here.
And Luminosity might not even know that Adapting's around the corner. They do have a sentry ward pushed on that left side choke point, but this might have been a little bit too much from Lumi. And they're all going to instantly disengage as soon as Zeros invest into the Jormungandr ult. And one more time, Pittsburgh Knights just take the objectives after the fact. Even though both got picked, it's only one pick against a still very healthy 4-man Fire Giant team.
There's my Deathbringer for a vote. I'm loving it at this point, man. Why not? There's just nothing on the side of LG that says you shouldn't build it right now. There's no Reflect, no Thorns, barely even any physical defense. Sovereignty's there. I mean, I know Void Shield's there and picked up 2 Lotus Crown, but it's just nowhere near enough. He's got the Executioner and the Titan's Bane. That kicks open the door for all that crit.
Void has to be the first to go in these engagements. If he's left to his own devices in that backline, he is going to continue tearing Luminosity apart. But that one pick, I think, could be the start of more to come if Lumi are willing. I think that it might even be fair for them to just go all or nothing for this Jingwei.
They don't really have many other options. Who else can they afford to punish? Zeros, though, is a significant problem in his own right. He's top on the Knights in terms of damage, second only to Oceans, who has been finding some relevant damage in his own right this game. But he just hasn't felt like they've been able to get to the right targets. Look where Joshy is, way down at the bottom, with only 6,000 player damage at this point. I know you said they might want utility from him, but I don't think they've gotten that either.
No, I don't think they've gotten damage or utility out of Joshy. These Whirlpools just not being nearly effective enough. Cripple's awesome, but everybody on Pittsburgh Knights has a way to avoid the cripples, and I think that's also caused a whole new slew of problems for this Poseidon mid. And it's really just been all about how far can Oceans go with the team on his back. He's been putting in all of the damage for Luminosity so far. And if Joshy is able to follow that up with some of his own, I do think that Luminosity have a pretty feasible chance of defending their Phoenixes. It's not going to be easy by any means, but the possibility is undoubtedly there.
They have to find some kind of way to chew through, though, all these protections. EmilZy has Shoguns and the Heart Word. Deathwalker has Oni and the Bulwark of Hope. I think that you're done trying to kill Deathwalker at this point. That's what Bulwark of Hope says to me, at the very least, stacked on top of all the extra mitigation he's been able to build at this point. They're such a formidable front line that I don't know what you do, and even if you can get Zeros low, he can still do relevant damage at the same time. Options running thin now for LG if they can't at least get Vote to get things started.
Pittsburgh Knights just have such strong team disengage that Luminosity are probably going to continue to struggle with lockdown opportunities against this squad. Because even if you capture one of them, you still have 4 other PK members to worry about, and all of them deal damage, and all of them have easy ways to escape.
You're exactly right. Deathwalker could still kill you at this point. I mean, it's just scary if we're on LG. Though they do have the Poseidon, they have the Soul to try and help clear these waves from range. The problem is that Pittsburgh Knights haven't even let a proper siege happen. They've just barreled right in. Deathwalker will be the first one on the left-hand side, adapting forces down the mid-side Phoenix. That's opened up for Vote to get in a few pot shots to bring the left-side Phoenix down to half. Kiki goes in, finds a nice taunt, but there's no follow-up on the back end. And now it's Zeros' turn to move in and create some space for Vote, to melt the left-side Phoenix.
Vote is just purely focused on that Phoenix, and now Luminosity are just going to have to sit back and wait to see where Pittsburgh Knights go next. Adapting is just too threatening from this mid-Phoenix positioning since he re-sieged that mid lane for Pittsburgh Knights, no problem. Had a fire wave and everything, so it's very unlikely that a Circuit with a Deathbane alone was going to be enough to clear those waves out.
Yeah.
And with only one Firebird left standing here, Finch, this might be the beginning of the end for Luminosity.
It's not going to be easy for this team, and they've already used the taunt from Kiki. Xaliea is going to have to hit everybody in the game with that Earth and Fury for this even to start looking like something that LG can win. And then a big-time Kraken or ultimate from Oceans on the back end. That's the only way I can see them building up any kind of defense.
But as long as Adapting is in this mid lane and threatening his presence, Luminosity can't afford to chase even if they get members of PK low. Deathwalker going to be made the target for now. Has lost about half of his HP to some good poke damage from Luminosity and that Phoenix, but it still just doesn't seem like quite enough.
I want to point out, they've got the Cursed Ankh fully upgraded for Deathwalker there too. That punishes anyone hit by the Earth Inferior or by the Monolith. This Vote is able to take down KikiSoCheeky to get things started off. Xaliea is very low, but adapting puts Joshy right into the dirt. EmilZy, though, not to be outdone, finds the sun. Xaliea and Deathwalker claims credit for that kill. molluskk way on the back line is no longer a part of this game. Pittsburgh Knights gonna barrel into the Titan room, and LG couldn't hold up. Game 1 goes down to PK.
A little bit of a lane swap, but doesn't seem to be swapping out the results so far for Luminosity. That's going to be a swing and a miss for the guys in blue. And thank you, Finch. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah. Were you waiting on that whole game? Just kind of came to
No,
me.
that actually kind of just came to me on the fly.
That's good stuff there, Taco. But you're not wrong. I mean, LG, it might have been a bit of different look, but the result came out exactly the same. I mean, just a tough loss for them there in that game. And I think it started because in that early game, they had no options, right? Who was molluskk supposed to go find to try and kill in that game or try and find a gank? They did get one on the Deathwalker, and that was about it.
I think that if molluskk hadn't died at level 1 and hadn't been forced to reset at such an awkward period of the game, because that's such a fragile state of the game, because it is so difficult to recover already in competitive play, much less to try and recover against the Pittsburgh Knights, where you've got adapting, Deathwalker, EmilZy. Those guys aren't usually going to miss their abilities, and I think molluskk probably got lucky on the fact that he was the only one to die in that circumstance. I think Joshy could have been in a little bit of danger, but overall, I just think that maybe molluskk should let that buff go. If he can expect that invade again from Deathwalker, sometimes you just gotta cut your losses early on.
I'm right there with you. To be fair to molluskk, I think it's pretty hard to get away from Osiris Fafnir in the early game, but you're right. I mean, he uses Deathbane, I think, to secure the buff in that situation. There's no chance that he makes it back out once that's been used. So that kind of started that spiral for them. But the Knights also, man, this is the best I've seen them play as a 5-man unit. The way they were responding to those ganks, the way they were looking for pressure by constantly stealing the red buff, very clean.
And to be fair to the Knights as well, I think that these are the kind of games that are necessary for a team that's supposed to be held to such high standards.
You expect for Knights to be able to come in and win this game exactly that cleanly. Unfortunately, LG couldn't continue their streak of grabbing those first Game 1 victories, but maybe they can find another. We'll get it back over to the analyst on the desk to break it down.
Thanks a lot there, John. Thanks a lot there, Taco. And as we look at this one, just as exactly how the Knights drew it up. They kind of took control of the game early. They did it in the mid, they did it in the late. This was just up and down Pittsburgh Knights.
It was a very interesting start to the Pittsburgh Knights because they didn't just send Deathwalker. They also sent EmilZy, but it was a staggered wave attempt. Like, once they sent out Deathwalker on the Osiris, at first, LG didn't react to that properly because they thought, like, okay, we could just get the buff and run away. But then EmilZy comes 5 seconds later, and that's why Joshy was still in the mid lane. We got Xaliea still in their solo lane, and that secondary wave is what allowed PK to get the first blood.
Just a little bit extra, and this was also a really important turning point for the game as well.
That's right, because before this engagement even happened, it was adapting that tower dove Oceans, right? Forcing out the Aegis, so the second kill onto Oceans was very easy without the relics. And then earlier on, Kiki was at half health from all the poke damage, so those were the 2 kills that really mattered. It enabled PK to get the Gold Fury.
And those were the 2 sort of like big macro moments, I think, that Pittsburgh Knights were able to take advantage of, and I thank you for the beautiful breakdown there. And then after that, or before, Zeros was the guy that kind of brought everything in between. Every time Zeros hits 4, the Luminosity has to scatter. We've seen other teams kind of deal with the damage Jormungandr. They know how to spread out a little bit better. They know how to disengage a little bit better. But the Pittsburgh Knights, this was Luminosity. They just didn't know what to do. We saw Luminosity at the Gold Fury, and Knights showed up and were doing some certain things. And then as soon as Zeros ults, they have to retreat. LG didn't know how to respond to the Yorm mid.
It wasn't just a global pressure. Zeros was doing a good job getting off the AoE damage, helping out Vote survive in some instances. When Vote was aggressive on the left side, he invaded at 5.5 minutes on the red buff, and then he uses the airstrike to get away cleanly. Had to even rely on the Jormungandr knockup to peel against Kiki, and whatever was happening on the left also was happening on the right for PK. Deathwalker on the Osiris was getting the better end of Xaliea on the Terra. In terms of getting more Totem of Coups, it was 6-2 by 15 minutes, so 500 gold goes to PK, but also stripping away some blue buffs from Xaliea. It took a Circuit gank and also a Pythagorum's piece onto Xaliea to help kill this tanky Osiris, even at 11.5 minutes where he only had Gladiator Shield.
It was tough. I mean, it certainly was a strong look coming out from the solo side. Looking at the role swap for LG, don't forget, that's what we saw. Joshy previously in the carry role, moving over to mid, and Ocean's taking care of what previously was Joshy's responsibilities. What did you see out of this role swap? Do you think it was successful? Do you like it? What's your thoughts?
I mean, so far only one game. It's too early to tell. There was one instance around 8 minutes where I saw Joshy did hesitate like a split second on a Kraken because of the Jormungandr World Serpent. He wasn't in position to drop the Kraken. Sure. He wanted to Whirlpool Kraken. By the time he dropped the Whirlpool, he realized the Kraken wasn't going to come out in time. Maybe if he Kraken before the Whirlpool, that would have been a kill. But outside of that, I think he played a fine mid-roll.
Yeah, I got to say pretty much everything that you said there as well. You know, it's a little bit too early to go for it. But if I want to give you my first impressions, I liked what I saw out of both Oceans and Joshy. You know, they're not going to win my #1 Player of the Year award anytime soon. But I think that what I was afraid of is not the case. A lot of times we see these role swaps and it just doesn't work. I think this worked and this is serviceable. And if what the Molluskk said about the mid laner is true, in that Joshy is just able to facilitate the communication and the shot calls a little bit more effectively in that position, then I'm all for it, and I think this was the right change. But with Tolly, like you said, yeah, I need to see more.
And not only that, I think like the communication and synergy hasn't been showing in that game because of the start. Molluskk dying early doesn't give the offensive capabilities for LG. After that first blood death, LG have to play defensive for a majority of that early game.
We'll see if they're able to turn things around here in game number 2. Picks and bans. And LG will maintain control of that first position. Or grab it, rather. They were second, right? Yep. So first pick goes to them. We'll see if they choose to ban the AMC like Pittsburgh did last time around. Again, a lot of wiggle room with respect to the bans. I think when we started just a couple of weeks ago, Tolly, there were seemingly not enough bans. You wanted to ban 5 characters, 6 characters right off the bat. You were looking at everything from fineokay to King Arthur. Now, King Arthur gets banned, but is it a necessity ban? I don't think.
Sure.
Fineokay, same thing.
Nasha and Freya as well. We're getting a lot of bans. Freya was banned in the secondary phase. Nasha not picked or banned in that last engagement. Nasha wouldn't be a bad idea maybe to get that early pressure, especially when you can easily wiggle out with that sash, with the ultimate as well.
I mean, Nasha is always, I get this question often. And I've had an easier time answering it in the past when I'm streaming or just hanging out. Somebody will be, what's a character you want to see more of in the SPL? And one of the nice things about Season 6 is that we've seen such a diverse range of gods that my answer is, well, I mean, I don't know, like Anubis? Like, what do I say here? But it's Nasha again. We've walked away from Nasha. He got a couple of changes. Still an absurd god with an absurd amount of ambiguity. I want to see more Nasha.
For me, it's Cerberus. I miss Cerberus.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we don't see too much.
We saw a lot of it in Season 5, especially towards the end when Splice was flexing it between Aurora and Divios. But Season 6, not really so much at all.
This is really interesting. So LG ban out Achilles and Merlin, 2 of the quote-unquote must-ban first-round bans, right? The AMC has been more and more sought after of teams to ban out here. And the Jormungandr. So Pittsburgh Knights have been one of the more successful teams with Jormungandr. LG, I believe Xaliea has brought this one out this season. And so with that in mind, Pittsburgh Knights here are just going, all right, we're not sure if LG can play this or not, but because LG didn't ban Jormungandr against Pittsburgh Knights, arguably what kind of won Pittsburgh the game, I think that shows that LG want to pick it.
Sure. I think that Jormungandr is a very popular pick between the two. I also thought Jing Wei was going to be a popular pick. I almost thought it was going to be a Jing Wei or an Achilles first pick, but instead going for the Erlang Shen. Kiki had a pretty good game on it. He missed a few opportunities because of great peeling from PK to disrupt the flow. But Terra being locked in from PK actually does surprise me because I don't think that Xaliea had the biggest influence on that pick, but I know that when it's piloted by EmilZy, he definitely brings that impact.
Exactly. We talk a lot about picks being sort of bans as well, right? You can take it away from the opposition. I think this is, like you said, just EmilZy picking for himself. When it comes to the Jing Tolly, top hunter for sure, gets out of a lot of nonsense. I don't really ever feel the need to like ban it. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
Jing, don't get me wrong, explosive bolts, airstrike can do work, but Jing never feels overly oppressive to me. It's just that she's too safe.
And because of that safety, Vote was able to invade the red buff at 5.5 minutes. 2 minutes later, he was thinking about invading the red, but instead goes for the safer play by getting the left side mid-camp. So that pressure that he was able to get on the Jing translated to neutral farm, benefiting all of PK.
That's fair. We'll see if other hunters can do it. LG will certainly have to look for somebody else.
And also, on the Terra first pick from PK, I almost would have wanted to see PK allow LG to pick it because Deathwalker is so aggressive in that solo lane that he can easily abuse Terra, or any Guardian for that matter, with his Osiris picks, maybe even Bellona if he wanted to.
LG going to go the way of Fenrir again.
By the way, Arthur's still up.
Yes. Well, Arthur has fallen down in the ranks. I think that top-level players, if you're playing in Silver, please still ban him. Top-level players, I think, have just really got a chance to understand him. When we go back and look at that clip of what Variety was doing, I was yelling it from the rooftops. Variety played very well, and the God was overtuned, and it's since been changed. Some of those changes, though, in hand, the changes to the character and players' understanding, you can't four-man collapse on King Arthur because he's going to glad shield you to death.
Yes.
You have to spread out, group up when you know when you can deal with him, out-sustain him with Kamazots, cripple him out with Artio or Ares. There's a number of ways to deal with King Arthur. Players have understood that, and now you look at gods like Osiris that are just a little bit more pure pressure. And I think that because of that, King Arthur, still probably worth a ban, still probably think aboutable, but other characters have kind of risen to prominence.
So I think that Arthur would definitely outwin the 1v1 matchup compared to Osiris, but what Osiris brings to the table that Arthur doesn't is the invade potential.
And the control, I'd say.
A little bit. The damage mitigation between the tether, right? Like mitigating the opponent's damage is a nice look. That's also what Terra does on the Earth and Fury. So overall team fights, I think that could be an aspect that PK are leaning on. But also now LG have to keep in the back of their mind that this Osiris level 1 is approaching at the speed buff.
Very true. And certainly something you've got to think about for sure. Yeah, the King Arthur is an interesting look there, totally, because I agree. I think Arthur just wins 1v1s. He's going to beat you in lane. Don't fight him. But when it comes down to the team fight, I find what King Arthur does best is zone multiple players. He can really zone 1 versus 3, 1 versus 4. He might die for it now, but you can totally zone. Whereas Osiris is more like, we're all fighting here. And I'm going to stun some, I'm going to slow some. The root and the anti-heal is nice, of course. So I think King Arthur, rather than just being, well, that's the character you pick for the solo lane period, just buy it, it's the best, do it, dude, I think now is a relevant choice for when he needs to be brought.
I definitely agree there. Also has the nausea effect of eliminating somebody from a team fight with Excalibur's Wrath. Not a bad look there, but surprisingly enough, PK thinking that LG might lean on that Arthur pick, so they're going to strip it away during secondary phase.
Like I said, still absolutely worth a ban. It's not he's still a great choice. It's just a matter of what does your team need. Looking at LG, this is a squad that can shred objectives. King Arthur being able to zone multiple players while Soul and Erlang stick on the objective. Sure, I like that ban coming out from Pittsburgh. They're also going to ban out the Aphrodite as they did in game number 1. Again, some changes to the character that we've seen to kind of make her a little bit more attractive, but I think 50% that, 50% LG are just an Aphrodite playing team. So got to look out for that one.
And PK were a little bit afraid of the Fafnir last game, which is why they picked it after the secondary phase. I think that Arthur ban could have been a Fafnir ban if they wanted to, but they're not expecting Fafnir to be played by Kiki. They think that it's going to be Erlang Shen.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, they're not expecting Fafnir to be in the solo lane, so going for a solo pick that Kiki probably was going to lean on.
You know, if anybody was going to play solo Fafnir, it'd probably be Xaliea.
I don't know.
The problem with solo Fafnir, and we've actually, Deathwalker has kind of exemplified it in the past is that you can just block the hammer. The hammer is Fafnir's main wave clear. You can just stand in between the minions and you don't clear the wave. But with that in mind, Pittsburgh Knights going to give Zeros the Zeus man. Double Z.
Yeah. It's funny because of the video that PK came out with recently, they were kind of giving a little bit of flack to Zeros' Zeus play. But because of that video, I think that they want him to play more Zeus as a result.
Probably. I mean, I've been there, done that. I know that feeling. Poseidon shows in last game here for Joshy in that middle lane after the role swap. LG thinking about it one more time. You ask and you shall receive.
Athena was hovered over for a little bit until Cerberus was the better selection because of the Poseidon Soul combo. If you're looking for ways to accelerate your magical damage, that Ghastly Breath, magical penetration goes a long way.
Last pick for Pittsburgh Knights. Mid lane locked in, duo lane arguably locked in. Duo lane locked in. They're looking for a jungler, folks. Unless Osiris finds himself in the jungle. That's undoubtedly where we're going to be seeing it. Pittsburgh Knights 1 game above LG. And I love this choice here. I mean, when it comes down to what Pittsburgh does best, they're looking to just choke out the competition. Arachne is going to start things early. She's going to win often. This looks like a fantastic draft, Tully.
I think PK are just a little worried about the LG invade, so Arachne is going to be prepared for it with the webs, and you also have Deathwalker on the Osiris, so it could be a double invade where both Deathwalker adapting lean onto mollusk's speed buff. Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into the drafts, and there's a lot that goes into SMITE game, but every now and then there's just a legendary player, and there's a character that gets enabled by that player. I'm looking at adapting, I'm looking at Arachne, and I'm expecting a victory. We'll see if that's what we get. John, take us away.
Be more than happy to, Tom. Thanks for setting me up. I got Taco here with me as well as we move into game number 2 between PK and LG. The only real switch up for the squad, though, is that they got this Zeus and Arachne instead of that Jormungandr and the Raven that they had last time. Still trusting the Jing and still trusting the Osiris here to try and get this done.
Still plenty of early game pressure, at least from Pittsburgh Knights, aside from the Jing and the Terra, but I don't think you really have to be all that concerned about a Jing and a Terra not having that early game presence when there's Osiris, Zeus, and Arachne to back them up.
Yeah, the only thing I might be concerned about if I'm PK is that LG have a whole lot of good boys on their team, and by that I mean doggos, right? They've got the Fenrir on their side, the Cerberus, even Erlang Shen has a little pupper as well. That could be a big time advantage for LG going into this match.
You know, I can't really fight that logic, Finch, and when you break it down even further, everybody loves dogs.
Yes,
that's just
universal.
A given fact.
Yeah.
Nobody likes spiders. And adapting is playing a spider.
That's true.
So by default, Pittsburgh Knights are viewed as the inherently worst team here.
Yeah, they should win the popular vote, I imagine, then on this one, right? The crowd vote has to be with LG and all these good puppers. And then obviously get rid of all spiders. Yeah, get rid of all these spiders on the side of Pittsburgh Knights. So a little bit of fun as we move into this one. But a lot of aggression for LG. And you pointed out, there's a couple members of the Knights roster that maybe don't love boxing in the early game. But I mean, Arachne and Zeus, that could potentially be scary if they go look for some invade. So LG, even with the Fenrir, even with the Erlang Shen, might need to be a little careful.
One thing I will add, though, is that I think Arachne is going to be a lot more punishable on dive-based situations in comparison to a Raven. So that is one adjustment. That's true. I think the Zeus won't, be able to do what Jormungandr does by any means, but Zeus just has a ton of damage, and I'm not sure that that's better or worse if I'm Joshy. I think that might actually be worse for Joshy personally, but it really just all depends on how well Zeros is actually able to utilize that Chain Lightning and the shield early on. Because he does have, I think, better opportunities at controlling some of these corners surrounding the left and right mid Harpies, and those could be punishing periods for Luminosity if they're not careful.
If they end up getting caught out. I mean, we saw Kiki die a couple times their last game too, so he has to be mindful about his positioning in those choke points in particular. I'm just curious though about how Zero's going to go about changing his mentality, because I think in a way it's very similar. Jormungandr worked for him where even if he took a ton of damage, he could still get his damage off with the ultimate. Zeus is kind of the same, right? He knows he's going to be dived. He knows he's going to very likely die. Just get off your detonate damage, and you've done your job. So even though he's this immobile Zeus, tiny compared to the Jormungandr, maybe there's not too much of a mindset change for him.
I think that really just all depends on EmilZy, and if I'm Pittsburgh Knights, I'm putting EmilZy on babysitter duty solely for the Zeus. I think that Vote, Adapting, and Deathwalker should be able to self-peel for themselves, at least decently enough that EmilZy can focus more so onto protecting Zeros, and with the Terra able to drop the Earth and Fury at any given moment in case things do get a little bit iffy for Zeros, I don't really see ample opportunity for Luminosity to have huge gaps or huge space to work with to try and fully punish.
When it comes KikiSoCheeky, Zero's the early target, but very little will come from it on the back end. Pittsburgh Knights make it out of that one A-okay. And Taco, that's what the problem was, I really feel like, for LG last game. Yeah, they didn't really have much presence in the early game, but that didn't stop them from looking. Every time they went for an opportunity, though, Pittsburgh Knights handled it well. I was impressed with the way Vote handled a couple of his early ganks. EmilZy, for the most part, was able to make it out safely, too. And even now, again, with a little bit of a skirmish there in mid, LG can't quite find it.
Well, Kinky blinks in, it's just that he's immediately met with a stun from EmilZy, so he doesn't really have a chance to try and follow up onto Zeros. It's just incredible how the Pittsburgh Knights swarm around each other when they're trying to protect one of their members, and a potential red buff invade from Luminosity will prove to be fruitless. I mean, Zeros got the red buff. I was waiting for him to go and try to pick it up, but I guess he's paying more mind to the wave instead.
And it is at least something that they got from the gank in the middle lane, to go back to that play. I mean, they did get the beads out from Zeros, right? And so he will be slightly more vulnerable. But you're right, they didn't find nearly as much as I would have expected on the back end of that one. And it's happened every time they've tried to look for ganks. I don't want them to get deterred for it. They've got to keep looking for every attempt. And they might find one more here. molluskk on his way, but Vote, level 5, has the airstrike. Just very little potential there for that to actually get a kill.
I just don't see a world where Erlang can ever really punish the Jing just by walking into the lane. And as long as Maul's blink is on cooldown, he won't really have many chances to try and effectively punish Vote. But drawing things back to that little bit of aggression there in mid against Zeros, yeah, it's cool that they pulled the purification beads, but what have they done since then? They looked for a red buff invade and were unsuccessful, and that's just about it. They haven't really gotten anything for pulling Zeros' relic, and I think that if one thing I do want to see Luminosity start to try and make more adjustments towards is just being willing to be more aggressive. I think that at times they're paying a little bit too much respect to the Pittsburgh Knights instead of trying to take more advantage of those opportunities.
And just settling for what the Knights end up giving them could potentially help out, but so far LG have not been able to do it. I've been thinking a lot about why Xaliea would really value this Fenrir for them in the solo lane, and now that we're here in the match, it definitely could punish Zeros quite a bit. You know, he's not going to have any CC immunity in the kit and can't really get away from that Ragnarok once he transforms, so maybe that's the plan, to try and bring him back.
Fenrir is great at being a little bit of a lane bully because of the Ragnarok at level 5, and most solo laners aren't going to have purification beads in response. Deathwalker, in fact, has a teleport, just recently used it, but is also mindful of his spacing, not giving Xaliea a chance to look for that Unchained jump stun, just staying a little bit outside of the range, enough to bait Xaliea in to want to look for the Unchained, but not enough to where he'll actually get clipped by the stun.
And even with the Ragnarok, the solo potential is probably not super high for Xaliea. I'd be looking for maybe molluskk to come over if they can catch Deathwalker with Lord of the Afterlife down and bring him back in, and the two of them shouldn't have too hard of a time cleaning up that kill. But that's something I'm sure Deathwalker's aware of. Every time he knows where molluskk is on the map, he knows he's in way, way less danger in this matchup against the Fenrir, and he can afford to continue to be aggressive like he's done so far. Only difference is, though, Xaliea already has this Guardian's Blessing stacked, and Deathwalker still only halfway to the Warrior's Blessing being done.
Kiki and Joshy are going to try to pull these left-hand Harpies. They got molluskk wrapping around the back, focusing on his Zero's blown up in an instant, but the same can be said for KikiSoCheeky. He'll end up falling to Adapting now on the backside, and Adapting's going to scurry on out of there on this spider legs, but he's looking straight at Joshy.
Wisely does not jump in there, even with Vote landing a couple shots. The cavalry was there for Joshy. He would not have been able to hit home with Adapting on the back end of that. He's gone for this Golden Blade first. But that's a big first blood for LG, and crucially, they were able to find Zeros. But this is the thing that I think is going to be a problem, even if they kill this Zeus over and over and over again. He already has dropped the Lightning Storm, right? He's already gotten off his damage. So yeah, they got him, but as long as his team keeps going, they should usually be able to get some kills on the back of it like Adapting did.
Ooh, Xaliea finally found the Unchained jump stun onto Deathwalker. A nice route from molluskk underneath the tower, but Deathwalker still had enough mana for that Lord of the Afterlife. Xaliea following it up now with the Brutalize. But Deathwalker just too healthy on this Osiris to really be all that concerned. And Finch, retouching on what you just said with Zeros by that Lightning Storm drop, I have a hard time finding any issues with what Luminosity were able to do with the first blood, but you're right. I don't necessarily see it as being a repeated opportunity, because Lumi should probably just be glad that it was only Kiki that ended up dying there.
That definitely could have been worse. They did a good job staying grouped, because adapting in that ultimate on the Nightcrawler up on the sky could certainly have dropped back down and punished anyone that was isolated. So it was good of Joshy to get back towards the team and for the squad to be there to make sure they limited the opportunities for the Knights. But things definitely could be scarier and scarier for LG going forward. Yes, they can kill Zeros. I just don't know if that's going to be valuable enough for the team.
On a side note, though, friendly reminder, Oceans is now the hunter for Luminosity, and Joshy is now the mid laner for Luminosity. A little bit of a role swap between their ADC and mid, just trying to find some success with something else. And EmilZy loved that passive use of the Terra, not even going to get knocked up from Kiki, and an immediate punish by Zeros. That Cerberus pushed up just a little bit too far and got electrocuted.
Yeah, I mean, EmilZy was very smart to use the wall, but I mean, also, I don't know how Kiki doesn't expect that. Like, I don't know a world where that works, where you pull the Terra in there with that ultimate, and instead he ends up getting punished.
Yeah, it's a little ambitious to hope that the Stingent Torment's going to actually grab the Terra, but I think Kiki was also aiming to actually capture Zeros inside of that Stingent Torment.
He did look for the stun, yeah.
Zeros just got a little bit out of range in time. Deathwalker, though, could be in some trouble here. Mink Form has been utilized, and Deathwalker's in serious trouble.
Is in trouble. Lord of the Afterlife gets him away over the wall, but Xaliea follows immediately with the Unchained. molluskk blinks in to try and catch him out, and now Xaliea can come back in for the fight. But Deathwalker might have done enough. Adapting finds the kill, and Deathwalker still stands. And now in the 1v1, molluskk runs low on options. The stun, though, wasn't available, and that lets the Erlang Shen get away. But somehow Deathwalker Houdinis his way out of that one.
I think Xaliea should have carried him away from the wall.
A little bit further.
He gave him his getaway by just holding him inside or on the opposite side of that fire giant wall, because the Unchained was on cooldown and Deathwalker knew it. It's incredible, though, that Adapting was actually able to make it over in time, and molluskk will successfully defend his speed buff, I believe. It seemed as though Adapting was trying to find a potential invade there, but that still gotta hurt.
That is a big play, though, that Pittsburgh Knights made, and that's exactly the one we were expecting from Xaliea and molluskk to be looking for, but this play is apparently not what the Knights were expecting, Taco. LG stripping away the gold Fury and keeping this game at parity, so even when those ganks in solo repeatedly failing, they still found some ways to make things work.
To be fair, I'm not surprised that Luminosity caught Pittsburgh Knights sleeping. I mean, you know that molluskk is low. Adapting just saw him buy the speed buff. Not sure that he was aware of the fact that molluskk chose to path towards LG's red as opposed to back into base right away, but Xaliea had already died, so there's not going to be any pressure coming from solo lane. There isn't normally a window of opportunity for a team to look for a Gold Fury outright, and I just don't think that Vote was expecting Oceans to have any help for it.
He definitely was not, as Vote is winning the trade here against Oceans quite handily, even with the minion wave there. Oceans comes back in to clear, and that means there's not much Oceans can do. He has to fall back towards his own tower. And Vote had a pretty good game for himself on this Jing Wei last time. He's carried that over in games 1 and game 2. So I expect that to still be strong. Xaliea battling it out here with Deathwalker, but not much solo potential, even with the tower's help, and Deathwalker makes out A-okay.
And Xaliea still got about 40 seconds left until that teleport is back online. He's got to be careful because his blue buff is due to respawn any second now. And Adapting's already making his way over. He's had full control of mollusk's back Harpies for the last couple of respawns, and now could be looking for a straight-up gank on molluskk.
Well, this is the fight Adapting wants. Brings molluskk down quite low. He does get the 9 turns blessing heal off, but a 2-man stun from EmilZy sets up for Adapting to go back in. He can't quite find the kill, but Zeros comes in and rectifies that shortly. Joshy goes down, but Oceans is able to track down Adapting. That makes things 1-for-1, a huge kill.
And he saved the speed buff for his jungler.
That was big.
Oceans just backs and runs straight to where the engagement is at. Those early type of rotations, though, are enough to, I think, send a message to Pittsburgh Knights that the jungle is not going to be as free as it was in the last game. And now molluskk able to rotate over to Duo to cover for Oceans. And so Vote won't get anything out of the exchange either.
I think Oceans has done a really good job here so far in this trade, and this might be what they were looking for, was to try and get into a position where he's more comfortable. But I don't know that I've been as impressed with Joshy in the swap, playing the Poseidon both games and really just not finding very much. So even if you get a good Oceans out of this, I think relegating Joshy, who was a good hunter, doesn't make much sense, as Zeros has to use the beads to get away from the pressure. Now it's Kiki who's in trouble, though he does still have the leap that allows him to disengage, and Pittsburgh Knights can't quite find the kill.
But still, that amount of burst damage against the Guardian, you have to factor that in every single time. It's getting riskier and riskier for Kiki to continuously try to step up in that mid lane, because Zeros is only getting more potent.
There's gonna be trouble though for Oceans adapting. Can't quite lock him out, and Oceans makes it out of there A-okay. Oceans back over here into the long lane, trying to keep this one stacked up. There's more action yet again here in the middle lane. The ultimate comes out from EmilZy, and Joshy gets chunked. It's just not enough damage, though. Joshy barely makes his way out of there. And now Xalia's come in to say hello, bring Zeros right back to the team, and they gobble him up. Now adapting in trouble, too. Xaliea finds himself a double kill on the Fenrir, rotating over to mid.
Dogs are better than spiders. We've been known that this is a true fact, but in all honesty, that was just Pittsburgh Knights getting outright punished by Luminosity, and Xaliea and Kiki hoping to keep the aggression going against Deathwalker, but it's a level 13 Osiris, and that might be a little bit too much.
Well, the part onto Zeros we expect to happen every time, but adapting also falling and not getting the kill into Joshy is what hurts. But Kiki just body blocked. He had nowhere to go. That's crazy. Kept him pinned up against the wall, and they just whittled him down.
This is kind of what I'm talking about, though, when we say that Luminosity has promising moments, and then they kind of shoot themselves in the foot with it. I don't really see a necessity for Kiki to get picked right there. I think that was just a poor pathing decision and an unnecessary attempt at poke against Deathwalker, where what should have once been a power play instance for Luminosity to take advantage of free farming without having to worry about Zeros and adapting, now instead Luminosity are going to have to worry about trying to challenge Pittsburgh Knights on this Pyromancer, and they won't even get the chance to do that.
Pyromancer goes down for the Knights, earned off that pick from Kiki. And man, I mean, that is just rough to be locked down like that. Not even off an ECC, but Zeros now in trouble in the middle lane. He'll fall. Lightning Storm still ticked, but Adapting comes in, instantly gets taunted back in. It's just not enough. molluskk ends up falling, but Adapting or the Nightcrawler might want more. They could slow Kiki down, but he will not re-engage. Adapting gets out of there.
My problem now, though, Finch, is Deathwalker is level 15 as Oceans tries to take this boxing match with Fun on the opposite side of the map. Kiki's going to use that Stringent Torment to try and buy his mid laner a little bit of time, but Deathwalker's popped the sprint. He is just gas-pedaling Joshy down inside of his own towers.
And Joshy has no mana. Joshy has no options. Joshy has no life. Deathwalker claims him, and now Vote in the 1v1 just needs one more auto, sends Oceans to the grave as well. 4 across the board for Pittsburgh Knights. Just when things are looking good for LG, the boys put the boots on the throat.
That explosive crit damage, just a little bit too much for Oceans to handle on the Soul. Primal Fury gonna get pulled, and Pittsburgh Knights just continue to reap the benefits of their ganks and constant initiations. I think that's just Pittsburgh Knights, though, taking advantage of Joshy on this Poseidon in mid.
He has not looked comfortable on it yet, I would say, but it's not just him. I don't know that Kiki has looked all that comfortable on this Cerberus either. 0-4-4 at this point. He's set up for a few kills, yes, but for the most part, he's been a bit of a sitting duck throughout this early game for the rest of the Knights. I've been impressed with some of what Xaliea has done. Oceans has looked great all set, but for the most part, this core for LG in the early game, that mid-jungle support, has looked a bit lost.
But for me, it all goes back to that initial pick onto Kiki, because that's what allowed Deathwalker to be able to rotate in the first place and begin pushing aggressively in mid, because he knew it was a 4v5 instance, and that even when Kiki came back, he was still not going to have his ultimates or anything available really that would be of sufficient peel for Joshy. And yeah, he buys Joshy a little bit of time, but this Osiris is more than tanky enough to deal with these towers by now.
Kiki can't find anyone with his ultimate. Probably trying to get the blink off, but was put in combat. He'll immediately pay the price. Vote, choose him up. Level 19, by the way, for the Jing for the folks at home. molluskk has to drop beads as well to get away from EmilZy. And the Pittsburgh Knights steal away the purple buff. Taco is still lost in that last fight. Yeah, the Cerberus got gobbled up. Yeah, for sure.
So that was like 4 autos. It was like 4 autos, Finch. I know it's an 8-level lead, but Ocean's trying to escape with the Disapparate. Still going to get caught by the stun out of adapting, but this T2 tower might not be Luminosity's for much longer.
They're going to start pushing in, but it won't be free. molluskk blinks into the fight right away, but is brought down half HP, though Knights turns Blessing. Keeps him topped off. Xaliea, though, could be a big problem. He comes right to the back of the fight to try and stop their disengage. EmilZy picked up and brought back into the rest of the team, but that just means he can put Earth and Fury on all 3 members, and still standing tall, even gets the shell off, and now Zeros makes it in. EmilZy gets out and 2 kills for PK. LG gotta run.
He goes for the Terra because he knows that Terra won't have purification beads or a way to escape the Ragnarok, but bringing a Terra into your 3 squishies might not necessarily be the go-to play, as Deathwalker now probably just going to auto Joshy into Oblivion again.
He wins this fight for sure. Joshy can only hope to run here, and I don't even know if he can hope for that. Deathwalker hunts him down under the Phoenix, and yeah, come back and try and steal the speed, because why not at this point? This level 18 Osiris knows no fear. Speed bus actually stolen. Oh, and by the way, the rest of the team, we're just going to do the FG. Pittsburgh Knights starting to run away with it in game number 2. 7K gold out in front, and 14,000 experience. It's staggering, the lead that the Knights have.
I think Pittsburgh Knights just got pissed off when Luminosity killed 2 of them at the same time. And
yeah,
it has been an absolute turnaround since that promising moment for Luminosity took place in mid lane. Vote's soloing a T2 tower because he knows there's no one from Luminosity that could possibly threaten him right now. Even Xaliea, I think, would just fold like paper in front of this Jing right now. And these crits continue to be an issue for Luminosity. Vote just gets all the farm he could possibly desire and then destroys Lumi with it.
Joshy in some trouble. Deathwalker hunting him down left-hand side of the fight, but does get some backup. Deathwalker taunted back in and will finally fall. That's a big kill for Deathwalker's first death. But a good trade for the Knights. I mean, they got the right side Phoenix in trade.
The fact that Deathwalker can keep the entirety of Luminosity at bay by himself is an issue alone. Kiki gonna get locked in, look for the Sinjin Torment onto Vote, but Vote will just dash away with the agility. EmilZy locked into place now, however, it's Kiki that's gonna go down first.
And Zeros dissects the fight with his own Lightning Storm ultimate. No way for the rest of LG to come in and try and keep Kiki alive, so they'll end up losing one more on the back end, though. I mean, I gotta be honest, at this point, I don't know how much Kiki's life is even worth. 06 and 5, level 13. Same level as Joshy, actually, which is truly staggering. Why is he so far behind? I mean, these two have just not been able to have the impact here this game, I don't think. Joshy and Kiki have really struggled here in this set.
Joshy just got ran at by Deathwalker, back-to-back deaths, essentially, and so that quickly hindered any little bit of snowball potential he might have had. Not only that, but whatever farm he had going for him was also stripped away by the Pittsburgh Knights. A large portion of Luminosity's jungle has been overrun by PK, and because of that, whatever farm is left over for Luminosity to scavenge out, they're splitting it between 3 to 5 different members at the same time. And back RBs alone just aren't enough to catch your Poseidon up. So Kiki and Joshy will probably remain the same level and just try to take these waves as they come inside of the Phoenixes. I don't think that this T2 tower fight is one Lumi can reasonably take.
And EmilZy has looked so strong this set. Really, the entirety of the Knights have looked clean. And this is the kind of performance I think they needed to come in and have today, because the Knights have at times been a bit spotty. They've looked like not quite as strong as you might have expected based on all these names. But in a set like this, where they're the heavy favorites, you saw the way the fans voted, 83 to 17 or something like that. You expected to win it clean, and they did. As immediately Xaliea goes in, tries to bring in Deathwalker, but he just put Deathwalker right on the back line, exactly where he wants to be. Kiki controls 2, but EmilZy just dashes forward to keep them zoned out while the Phoenix gets attacked.
I just can't help but think that this is only helping out the Pittsburgh Knights. Xalia's target focus. At least try and pull the beads of one of the carries, even if it means that the Ragnarok isn't going to be efficient. Maybe Joshy gets a better Kraken, or maybe Luminosity can try and use the Cripple of the Whirlpool to look for a pick onto whoever did just expend their beads. Either way, all 3 Phoenixes have now been taken by Pittsburgh Knights. And I'm not even sure that Luminosity are going to be able to sufficiently clear out the fire minions.
This is very, very bleak for LG. It's so difficult to come back from 3 Phoenixes down at this point. They're going to need some big-time plays coming out from Xaliea, finding someone, I think, other than EmilZy or Deathwalker to pull in, because at this point, he's just initiating for them. I mean, they would buy Blink to do exactly what Xaliea has done for them for the most part, and it still hasn't been enough for this team. And with Joshy so far behind, with only Spear the Magus, I don't know if his damage is going to be enough. I'm thinking, Taco, that they're going to need Xaliea and Oceans to really sync up on an ultimate combination to get Zeros out early or maybe vote, and then they can try and look for that fight.
I think the other problem too for Luminosity though is that even if, let's say, you know, some crazy world happens where everybody on Luminosity gets a chance to catch up the Pittsburgh Knights in terms of itemization and gold or experience, I still don't think it makes that much of a difference. Because, well, actually, I take that back. Oceans did just get a Divine Ruin online now. But I was looking at the anti-heal options right now for Luminosity when dealing with Pittsburgh Knights. There is so much self-sustain and team sustain as a whole from PK that I think it's also been forcing Luminosity into just constantly pushing back and back further into their own Titan room because they just can't afford to match the damage as well as deal with the sustain from PK.
Fire Giant has now come back into the map, Taco. Pittsburgh Knights can grab that easily. They pushed up the right side wave to make sure there was no way LG could move beyond their own Phoenixes. And they're going to go in for the defense now. In fact, LG aren't even in position to defend. They might lose this right side Phoenix right away just because no one's home. Yeah.
There really is. There's a Phoenix that freshly respawned, but it won't be there for very long. Luminosity might just already be signing off on their own death wishes, Finch, because Pittsburgh Knights are looking awfully hungry.
They look like they want to come in and clean this game up. LG will have to find the type of team fight we've not seen from them yet if they want to keep this game going. Vote taking a lot of damage is huge. Xaliea tries to make it to him in the back line, but just can't clean it up. Zeros gets Xaliea. Very first kill of this fight goes in favor of PK. In some trouble is Joshy way in the back line. Deathwalker sticks to him quite nicely, but he does make it back to the fountain and get some heals off. But Vote takes down Kiki. Oceans ends up falling to the pressure from Zeros, and now they can finally turn their attention to the Titan. Game number 2, much in the same fashion as game number 1, goes down for Pittsburgh Knights.
I think that escalated a lot quicker than game 1, however, and it just feels more and more like Pittsburgh Knights are starting to really figure out Luminosity and what they have to try and challenge them with. So far, though, this is, again, the type of performance that you would expect from Pittsburgh Knights in this matchup against Luminosity, and that's not to be a jab at Lumi by any means. It's just that Pittsburgh Knights, I think we can all comfortably or be comfortable in stating that they hold themselves to incredibly high standards. And if you're going to consider yourselves as the way that I view PK is probably a top 3 team.
Yeah, I think so.
Then you can't afford to look questionable in these types of sets.
And yes, it's exactly the kind of performance they have to have if they have aspirations for winning, you know, mid-season invitational, for even further down the line winning worlds. Then in these kind of games you have to be clean. But I mean, if I'm on LG at this point now, I'm wondering if this role swap has done more harm than good, because Joshy looks out of sorts to me in the middle lane. I don't think that he's comfortable there on the Poseidon that he's played in these 2 games. I think Oceans has looked fine in the Hunter role, but they definitely haven't gained enough from that to make up for, I think, kind of hindering Joshy.
I almost want to say just throw Joshy onto the Chronos and see what happens. I don't think that there's any reason to, you know, limit his grapple to this Poseidon.
I don't think so either. It hasn't looked particularly persuasive, at least from where I'm standing. But I imagine the guys on the desk, though, have some ideas. Let's get it back to them.
I've got the same ideas that you guys have. Pittsburgh Knights, that damn good. Game 2 goes in their direction as well. And again, just real strong play that's what they do.
Despite losing zeros early, and a couple of times, honestly, they were able to pick up the pieces once the team fights broke out. I think that the Osiris effect on Deathwalker, the Arachne effect on adapting, really showed off his stuff. And also, more importantly, was the Terra onto EmilZy. The damage mitigation from the Earth and Fury. There was one instance when Xaliea brought the Terra a little bit too close to the action.
Yeah, that was a little bit problematic, but this is what we saw the majority of the time. Zeros yanking the trucker horn and getting the kills there. Kiki falling in that one. This is the Deathwalker on the Osiris you were talking about. The one versus, this was the 2v1. Earlier, though, he got out of a situation. 1350. Actually, that is the situation anyway. We saw the gank on the solo lane, and DW kind of dances with two, gets the teammate over there, and then gets out of there and a kill. It was kind of nuts.
Yeah, and Vote playing around that Stygian Torment very well. Kiki not having the best game on the Cerberus, and the one ultimate that he had that was really good at 15 minutes was completely negated by his own teammate. Joshy drops the Whirlpool as they were lifting off, so they couldn't get under the tier 1 tower. The cripple takes priority.
Vote did some work there, and he's thinking about game number 3 for sure. Adapting, chowing down. Well, he chowed down on the opposition in game 2. I was saying, look, man, the Arachne can go out of control. You give adapting a character like that, and downward spiral.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh Knights now with this 2-0 lead, they haven't lost to, well, they haven't dropped the map on a set that they won. So I'm kind of expecting this to be a lot of momentum, especially a team that is struggling, such as LG.
I got to agree with you on that one, totally. And as I said, the 4-2-7 adapting, really working out in the early game, handing the game to the team a little bit later. 0-0-13, 3-0-5 for EmilZy and Vote, respectively. That was a real interesting part of the team fight towards the end as well. Again, the critical strike comes out here for Vote, and again, the damage is dealt. Number 3 on the player damage for his team, adapting coming through in number 2.
And Zero is doing a good job as well, despite taking a number of spills throughout the game. Vote's crit build was working out well for him, but also EmilZy on his build. The Beads second relic, very important there because he was against a Fenrir and a Cerberus, two guys with heavy displacement.
We see Beads for Guardians a lot, specifically against the Fenrir, because the Fenrir grabs you, brings you out of position, and although most of the time the Guardian's job is to, well, I've got a shell, I'll just deal with this, or I've got, something else, I'll just deal with this. The Fenrir makes it undeal-withable so much because you're grabbed up, you can't do anything. So I like the Beads there, and never such thing as always, but almost always against the Fenrir, I like to see the Guardians grab the Beads.
Especially when you're dealing with a Poseidon follow-up damage. There's a lot of follow-up damage, and as long as you can survive long enough to the point where you get off the Earth and Fury, that's all you need sometimes. And that's kind of what happened where he got Ragnaroked, EmilZy, on the Terra. He got closer to the enemy team, and he got off the Earth and Fury, took all that damage, popped the shell, was able to barely avoid the cripple to double dash through his monolith and keep the team fight going. That was around the 18-minute mark or so, where there was a frustration ultimate from Xaliea. He couldn't get anyone else out of position, so he's like, you know what, all right, EmilZy's right in front of me. Let's see what happens if I go on him.
And that was credit to, sure, you can talk about, Xaliea not being able to grab those players. That's credit to Pittsburgh Knights being in a better position. They're in a great position right now as far as the set is concerned. We'll see if they can earn it here in game number 3. LG, again, will look for the first pick and, of course, the first ban. Last time around, they got rid of Achilles and the
Merlin.
The Merlin, that's who it was. They did get rid of the Merlin. And so with that in mind...
surprising, with them being first pick.
Interesting. It would be surprising if they had a reliable mid laner. And while I don't call Joshy unreliable, being brand new to the position as far as we are concerned, I think is a little bit shaky to lean on that pick. We say, like, if you're going to first pick this, you better do it.
Yeah.
Maybe Joshy can't do it, and I think that's fair.
Well, you can still keep it on Oceans in the long lane if you really want to.
Sure, we've seen some of that.
Streak up in the minor league European player there, being able to have great success.
Yep.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Other players have run mages in the SPL also, in terms of Fun Baller going Poseidon.
Nuwa frequently comes to mind as well. Not this time around. The Bumblebee will be banned out by the team with the Bumblebee colors. That's kind of funny. Black and white and black and yellow. Bee.
That's 3 games in a row now that PK really are respecting this Muzen ban. They just don't want to have zeros to deal with that Muzen in middle.
He does a lot. The Muzen has an early game, he's got a mid game, he's got a late game. The burst damage when you go ability based is actually really intense to deal with. And if you're going middle lane, you're probably going into that burst build as well. Beautiful. LG, go with the Jing build, which you were asking, or ban rather, which you were asking for.
I was asking for them to first pick the Jing, probably for themselves, because I think that Oceans could easily play the Jing, be very comfortable with it, but instead wanted to go for a different option, but are respecting Vote's comfort on that pick. He's been able to invade multiple times in game 1 because of it, and then in game 2, it was impossible to really lock him down because of the Stygian Torment. You could just easily dash away from it during the engagements of the Erlang Shen. You could just dash away when you get knocked up.
You always got to be aware of that and keep that in mind, because it just eliminates certain choices. Like we saw the Stygian Torment, like you mentioned. Other things come to mind as well. I always look towards the Erlang Shen, but even things like Sobek, you just can't play it because everything that Sobek does gets negated by the Jing selection. So with LG banning that out, that's where my mind goes. What knock-up-oriented characters do they want to play? Jormungandr selected here as Pittsburgh Knights ban out the King Arthur. Last time, they banned the Jormungandr.
Is that all?
See if this will change things up, because Achilles is open, and Pittsburgh will likely give that to DW.
That's right. PK didn't really mind LG going for one or the other because they knew they would have the scraps. And I think when DW is playing Achilles, that scraps becomes like luxury food, kind of.
Absolutely. Just dumpster diving behind a 5-star restaurant. Terra going the way of Pittsburgh Knights as well. Jormungandr is a god that I think pairs with kind of everything. There's nothing really that Jormungandr does specific that, for example, when you pick an Anubis, you need all the peel in the world, right? When you pick an Arachne, you're looking for mid lane pressure to go with that, right? Jormungandr, I think, is open-ended. Whether you're playing it damage-based or frontline-based, he's going to dive the backline, going to cause a bunch of disruption, and what you pair with it doesn't really matter.
And that's what makes him scary in terms of his flexibility, right? Like solo lane, mid lane, support. You just don't know where it's going to go. For LG, not expecting it to go for Joshy. Probably going to be leaning more towards Xaliea in that solo lane. So that's why Achilles was such a priority pick as well, because also LG can run the Achilles in the support position. So if you don't pick your solo pick for PK now, you might not ever get it in the way that you want it.
Raijin has been a nice selection for LG in the past. Of course, that's when we had Oceans in the middle lane. So we'll see if Joshy can play it, or if Oceans winds up playing it in the long lane. Such a many things to think about. Pittsburgh Knights locking in Hebo here. I'm convinced this goes to Adapting, who historically... So Hebo in jungle has always been a little bit of a spicy pick. I think it's always been viable. It's just a matter of how you want to play it. Now, players have been warming up to a little bit more lately, and historically, I've always not really liked Adapting Hebo. I felt like his gameplay style didn't really fit it, just, perhaps over-aggressive, but here in Season 6, he's really been playing a lot of it, and he's adjusted, and I've liked the results, so... Pittsburgh Knights going with the Waterman, and for the first time in a long time, I've been happy about it.
And LG are adjusting as well by banning away the Neath. If it is Habwa in the jungle for Adapting, that means that Zeus in the mid lane probably going to be playing a physical character to kind of match that balance. So Neath comes to mind, Uller comes to mind, the Muzen is banned. Chiron has been picked from time to time. Not sure how often Zeus has been piloting that, but could be maybe also Chernobog.
I don't mind the Chiron here because of Cobra's Kiss. Chiron, of course, whenever you think of Chiron, you have to think about that cleanse, and I think the cleanse would come into play here if Zeros wanted to bring that character. Second round of bans almost done. Luminosity Gaming looking at the Neath that was hovered last time around. Well, Luminosity hovered it actually, but Zeros certainly has that in his wheelhouse. Whereas Pittsburgh Knights are looking towards control characters. The Fenrir and the Kumbhakarna banned out here by the black and yellow. Luminosity will look towards that carry role, take away the Shibalanke with the Jing ban and the Shibi. Where's Vote gonna go?
He could also play the Uller. Honestly, at the end of the day, he's an aggressive hunter that's going to be looking for highlight plays. So far, Oceans hasn't really been able to step up to the Jingwei, so I think that's why we're seeing that ban in the first round from the Jingwei. So instead of the Uller trying to get the global pressure, wherever adapting is going to go in the Habois, Vote will follow.
And the Chernobog. I like this guy. Slavic. Old school. Newer character, but a very kind of like old school, just shoot them in the face type of play style here when you look at the combination. But, you know, then he can fly across the map, and that's a little bit new school. But Chernobog, certainly an interesting choice here for PKLG. Well, you want to talk old school. Thor and Artemis, almost as old school as they get.
Wow, that is really surprising to see Thor being hovered over. That means that Serket probably in the support position, Jormungandr solo, Thor in the jungle. And I like Thor for 2 reasons. Number one, obviously global pressure.
Sure.
And then the second reason is because of the long range setup from your Tectonic Rift to be able to set up Raijin. That long range poke means you never have to get too close for Habois to receive his water cannon.
I've always been a big fan of Thor against Habois as well, because you can take out the ultimate really well if you can be crafty about it. Hebo doesn't have any ways to get past the wall. People always look at Rat and Thor in the same bucket, but the big thing that separates those two, in my opinion, besides the ranged poke like you mentioned, is the wall. And when you look at Achilles, when you look at Terra, when you look at Habois, even Chernobog, I guess, can work with it. But these are characters that get stopped by that geometry for sure.
Yep.
So I'm a big fan of this specifically versus the Habois.
Ooh, maybe it is going to be actually Habois in the mid lane with Mercury being hovered over for PK as something that is great in the hyper carry, but also it gets kind of shut down by the Thor wall. Not very easy to get through that one. It's going to be an interesting mechanics test for molluskk whenever that Sonic Boom is being charged.
That's the key, is he's got to be able to find that Thor versus the Merc. An old school opposition here. And again, like you said, it's going to be real just who can do it. Yeah. Last game, it was the adapting that could do it, but I'm looking at LG and I'm putting a lot of marbles on the Thor selection.
And it definitely seems like he wanted global pressure, and with Ratatasker still available, wanted Mercury for more late game focus, trying to pair that up with the Habois, allow the Terra to be defensive so you can be purely offensive on the Merc.
Real quick, Tolly, do we see a game 4 or is this it?
This is it.
Let's see if that's the case. Taco and John, take us to the game.
I'm right there with Tolly, man. It's hard to pick against PK in this time, but I guess it's something that they can win. Like they were saying, if molluskk can come through for them on this Thor, if you can stop some of this Mercury Sonic Booms, if you can stop maybe like the Habois crushing waves, anything to cut these paths off and make this Thor pick work, then LG might have a shot.
It's a good thought, that's for sure, Finch. I think that as long as the thought translates to execution. I mean, yeah, usually, but I think for right now, Luminosity are hoping that this thought is a little bit more than just a thought, and that it actually ends up being effective gameplay for molluskk. And it's actually not going to be Thor in the jungle. It'll be Serket instead. Kiki with the good old-fashioned Thor support, baby.
Yeah, that's really on me for thinking they'd play stuff in a spot where...
in a standard
Yeah, we've
position.
seen it before, yeah.
It's all right.
Really, that's on us for sleeping on the Thor support from Kiki. I mean, and to be fair, you know, Kiki is someone that can play a lot of different stuff. He has a really high mechanical ceiling and has played through an eclectic career in all kinds of different roles. I'm sure he can play the Thor very well. It's just going to have to be darn near perfect for it to work.
I actually think I like Thor's support more because of the fact that it's a Habois. That I think Kiki will have an easier opportunity of just harassing zeros over and over again. And not even necessarily trying to throw the focus towards adapting or vote, but like legit, if you can just lock down zeros, that has been the one thing that Luminosity have struggled with throughout this entire set so far. It's keeping zeros pinned down long enough to sufficiently punish. And not even just zeros, but like the carries from Pittsburgh Knights in general.
Kiki tries desperately to defend his own buff. Looks like he won't be able to grab it. Deathwalker takes it away and then teleports back to the lane to make sure he gets in front of the minion wave and can then defend it, though he doesn't actually step up to it. He's just going to be here for the farm, so he makes it just barely in time to make sure he doesn't actually lose out on anything as Kiki gets stunned, takes a good bit of poke, but Xaliea is right there to return plenty in his own right.
Deathwalker and EmilZy, not level 2 just yet, but neither is Xaliea and Kiki. And one thing's for sure, Finch, they're a lot further behind in experience as opposed to Deathwalker and EmilZy. Adapting level 2, Xaliea just hit level 2, however, but Kiki's probably going to be made the target.
They're not expecting this. Kiki makes it to the hammer, but gets caught by the special delivery. First blood for the Knights. Deathwalker grabs it for himself. An early rotation to the solo lane of all places. And yet again, Kiki ends up taking a spill.
Pittsburgh Knights are out-cheesing the cheese. That's what it's feeling like for me, Finch. In all 3 games, Pittsburgh Knights has had really strong responses to Luminosity's early game wackiness. And I don't think it's that wacky to have support in the solo lane, but it is when that support is the Thor.
That is definitely different from what we're used to as molluskk gets walled off and knows that this is his fate, I suppose. He should be able to move in now and try and strip away these back harpies. EmilZy can't really contest, but though he bullies him enough that he has to settle for just the 2 smalls and can't get the big ones. That's not too bad there for EmilZy in that spot.
But considering how much of a beatdown Pittsburgh Knights have been laying on to Luminosity for the past 2 games, Finch, the last thing you want for your team morale is to see your support dying within the first minute and a half, 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah, that really hurts. And the pieces that have struggled, I think in particular for LG, has been the core, the jungle mid support, and the way they've been able to play together. So they're already on the back foot now. This Thor that's going to come in to try and fight with them is already behind in a way that it was almost felt unnecessary. It just was an early good gank from adapting that punished them. So that 3v3 going to be even harder now.
Well, even if you factor out Vo and Zeros, EmilZy adapting, and everything that they've been doing throughout this set, I think one other big elephant in the room that we haven't really touched on too much is Deathwalker. He has been controlling every single aspect of Luminosity's backline throughout the mid to late game team fights, and Luminosity just have 0 response for this solo laner. And all 3 games, Deathwalker has been on an incredibly aggressive warrior, and I'm almost wondering if it might have been better suited for Luminosity to give Xaliea something where he could try and match fire with fire as opposed to the Terra, the Fenrir, the Jormungandr. These are all gods that, sure, they can stalemate a lane, but they're not typically going to be able to outright win the lane.
Right, and I don't think Xaliea is going to be able to do it. It's another gank attempt is here, though. This is a much harder one. Not going to be able to, throw the Jormungandr, and he had, I imagine, at that point, the ultimate anyway, though it does look like he doesn't have the diamond. Perhaps he didn't put a point into it at this point. Xaliea is 5 already. It's very interesting.
Might have been prioritizing lane clear over his potential to escape. Probably not expecting a Mercury, though, to spend all that much time looking for gank opportunities, because special delivery is never going to connect against a Jormungandr. There's just no hope there. Sonic Boom, at best, you get a little bit of a stun, but even then, Xalia's probably just going to be able to ult away.
Right. If he has the ult, then there's a almost 0% chance you can make it work. It's very, very difficult against the Jorm if he knows it's coming early. Kiki, though, tracked by the wall. EmilZy buys his team as much time as possible. They can't complete it. Though I think we saw in that situation, though, Taco, to go back to the solo lane, that just the idea that there could be an ult was good enough to deter the aggression as Vote loses out on the train here with Oceans, but makes it out okay.
Oceans really wants that solo kill. A little bit of revenge after game 2. Xaliea, though, locked into place and won't even get a chance to escape. A nice fatal strike coming out of Deathwalker. I don't even know if that was on the execution mark. I think that just might have been outright burst damage.
Just might have been enough to get the kill. Well, Oceans thought he had a 1v1 there for a moment, and then Vote came back in, reminding him that he's Chernobog. I imagine Vote might have taken the opportunity to back and come back in with the ultimate, since he's so healthy at this point compared to where he was before, which is something Chernobog kind of brings.
Yes, Living Nightmare on cooldown, and I'd have to assume that Vote isn't pulling a Xaliea here, holding on to leveling up his own ultimate. So pretty sure that he was able to just return to lane swiftly. And Oceans, without that mounted archery, doesn't have as quick of an escape route. Should be careful here, though. I think Oceans is trying to save enough gold to finish his own boots, but needs to keep in mind that Vote's already got Warrior Tabi online.
Kiki's here, but Vote comes in to strip away the purple buff. Kiki not able to defend or stick around for the fight, And now Kiki has to be careful. Adapting and EmilZy are here to try and lock him down. Special delivery grabs him first, goes into the Berserker's barrage, and that allows him to escape over the wall. But with Sonic Boom charged, I don't think Kiki's out of the woods yet.
No, Kiki knows it. He's placed a couple of wars to try and buy himself a little bit of time. Wall's going to create some separation from adapting. Kiki still has the hammer toss as well to try and escape, but adapting's not going to waste any more time playing Ring Around the Rosie with this Thor.
Very close, but Kiki was able to make it out of there just barely. I wonder if the Talaria boots factors in any there. A little bit of extra movement speed to kind of help him keep the wall, or that giant boulder really, not so much a wall, but that boulder in between him and the ultimate from adapting, so adapting could never quite line it up.
Adapting definitely catches up to Kiki if it's not for Talaria, but with both of these assassins having them online, not really much of a chance for adapting to keep up, so to say, without the blink online just yet. Deathwalker to EmilZy, paying a visit one more time to Xaliea over on the solo side. molluskk is here for backup, but I don't know if it's really that much help.
Two-man stun, though, from Kiki, and molluskk tries to follow up with a Cobra's Kiss, but just not enough damage. In comes Vote on that ultimate, makes it all the way across the map. Kiki gets rooted as well. A huge impact from Vote on the Chernobog on the right-hand side, and that sets up 2 kills for the Knights and the buff invade, because why not? The Knights have all set long been able to do basically whatever they want.
Everything that could possibly go wrong for Luminosity in every single one of these engagements usually does. And it's not because of bad luck, it's not because of faulty composition, it's just the Pittsburgh Knights outplaying Luminosity over and over again. These rotations are just better fared for Pittsburgh Knights because they've got Vote on the Chernobog to respond. They're going to win the body count matchup. And that's something that I don't think that Luminosity are factoring in nearly enough when they're trying to play defense on their own jungle buffs.
Yeah, and this is only going to get worse, I think, because of this Pythax start that Xaliea went. I saw the tiny trinket, and I wasn't sure if he was going to be back here yet again, but he is one more time with this early start. And it does give him some more damage, but this isn't even going to be as difficult as sometimes it is on these early ganks to kill this Yorm, because he's just not all that tanky. He didn't even die in that last engagement, but they were able to pressure him out, force him into the ultimate right away, and then clean up.
I guess on the bright side, though, for Luminosity, it's really only been Kiki dying over and over again, and as far as experience is concerned, Luminosity really isn't trailing all that far behind Pittsburgh Knights. It's mostly just a gold deficit right now between these two teams.
Sonic Boom lands in molluskk, few options. Xaliea now in some trouble as the Deathwalker adapting dive continues. Fatal Strike won't land at the very least, but I think this still will spell the end for Xaliea. Yeah, let EmilZy get this one. He brings Xaliea down. 6 now on the board, 0 for LG. A nearly 3K gold advantage, and Kiki comes in. I don't know about this.
Kiki might have just came to try and play deep into the tower, but he could end up following suit of his other 2 teammates. Deathwalker already trying to give chase, but wisely, Kiki falls back to the T2 tower. The blue buff freshly respawning. No hopes of the Thor having the cooldown in time to try and defend.
And Oceans has to run away too. Vote could win this duel, though with molluskk here, that changes things. Comes in with the last breath, but into the wall goes the Chernobog. That lets him avoid the mounted archery. Now he charges his own ultimate and can use this to disengage. Remember, he has to go to a shadow near one of his oppositions as Deathwalker gets Kiki, so he'll go to Joshy's in the middle lane, and that gets Vote away.
Vote, I think, almost had a kill opportunity onto Joshy even in the mid lane. And Pittsburgh Knights just continue to stagger the respawn timers out of Luminosity. Of course, that's not easy to do either because these respawn timers are insanely fast right now, and yet it feels like someone's always dead.
Adapting, doesn't have the ultimate, so Xaliea should be a-okay. He makes yet another rotation over to the solo lane as if Xaliea hasn't had a hard enough time already throughout this game. But look at all the experience disparities that are starting to materialize already. Adapting nearly 3 levels ahead of molluskk. There's been no farm for the Serket. A 2-level lead for EmilZy over Kiki, who's died 3 times. Even Vote has about a 1.5 lead over Oceans because he's been able to rotate over and get some kills and assists. I mean, this has been a rough start. It's slowly, it feels like, gotten worse for LG throughout the set as the Knights really warm up and get into the groove.
Yeah, I said that the experience wasn't all that noticeable 2 minutes ago. And since then, It's become pretty damn noticeable, Finch.
Yeah.
And adapting only continues to expand his own lead over molluskk, just punishing this circuit over and over for opting for blink over beats.
This might be a good fight, though. Finally, the numbers favoring LG. Up into the air goes Kiki, but keep an eye on adapting. He could find a line to come through with his own ultimate as well. So Kiki just goes right for him to force him to cancel it. And that means LG can at the very least disengage, but maybe they can re-engage. Deathwalker's here, but Sonic Boom catches out Xaliea, the wall too late, and Execute comes through. Now Kiki, isolated and alone, adapting, gets a kill of his own, and 2 more go down. 9 on the board for the Knights.
Vision gonna be placed out for Joshy, but I think everybody from Luminosity already knew that Pittsburgh Knights are in their jungle. There's just nothing they can do about it. So instead, Joshy and molluskk are forced to just split another wave in mid, and Pittsburgh Knights are open to take whatever they please, and that's just going to be the Pyromancer next on their list.
Why not come over and grab this one too? Shouldn't have to worry about LG stopping you. molluskk just looking for what farm he can. He's now moved into the Knights jungle to try and strip away the red buff, but Vote's here to defend. Well, molluskk got the buff.
XP value.
All it costs him is his life.
He's
and
probably going to die trying to farm his own jungle anyway, Finch. So you know what? Might as well die on the enemy team's jungle instead.
Not wrong at all. That's an interesting way to look at it. If he's in danger, no matter where he is, might as well strip away some farm. Because remember, the farm is a little bit more valuable there. I know the invade changes happen, so it's not as worth as much as it was. But just strip the farm away from Knights and get some from molluskk.
And this is probably the part of the game where Luminosity, oh, hold that thought though, Kiki gonna get wrapped up one more time. Zeros with enough mana to find the water cannon and the water spout just to seal that deal, while Pittsburgh Knights also simultaneously pull the Gold Fury. EmilZy and Vote farmed up and plenty healthy enough to just strip this objective off the map.
molluskk, though, at least wants zeros, but can't even get that beads available for the hop wall. That gets him out of there, though. Gold Fury was dropped. Adapting in some trouble. Tycho Drum lands. Joshy showing up 1-0 on the Raijin. Puts the first kill on the board there for LG, but might be in some trouble. Actually, molluskk comes in, keeps Joshy alive. There's a pulse for LG finally here in this game.
Signs of life, but Deathwalker quickly to shut things down and remind all of Luminosity he is still kicking over in solo lane. Xaliea will be soloed for the first time this game. This Jormungandr just picked one time too many, and it's resulted in a pretty steep level advantage for Deathwalker.
5-0-5. We're a solo laner 13 minutes into the game. It just so rarely happens. Deathwalker now finally in some trouble as molluskk rotates over. The second Cobra's Kiss lands, and that'll be enough. Ambush comes in. The last auto gets it done. Kiki had the ultimate just in case it was needed, but it wasn't.
molluskk probably just got enough gold to finish buying an item after killing Deathwalker. 3 levels down, that is a huge kill bounty to confirm. And Pittsburgh Knights got to be careful, because a few more instances, just like the last 3 picks that Luminosity have gotten, could ultimately result in LG catching right back up to the Pittsburgh Knights. It is difficult, I think, to maintain leads right now when teams are able to effectively counter-punish.
Yes, if LG can find a couple more opportunities like that, then they can start to claw their way back in. A few more mechanics now to make it a little bit easier if you're the team that's behind to get some extra golden farm from those kills and catch back up. Though I do want to point out, Vote's doing a very interesting build path. He's gone Warrior Tabai, Transcendence into Jotun's Wrath. So this feels all power and ability base for this Chernobog.
Well, he can also spam his cooldowns to, I think, outmatch Ocean's poke potential with a Heavenly Banner, because if Vote's able to use that Crystallized Curses and Barrage on the wave, and then also able to utilize it one more time as Ocean's is trying to clear out his own minion wave, it kind of makes it so that Ocean's has to take the more passive stance and wait for Vote to clear his creeps first.
molluskk in trouble, able to ambush away just barely, though adapting wanted blood, had the ultimate charge, just could not find the angle. So instead they'll quote-unquote settle for the Gold Fury, I imagine, and pull this one. Even with the frenzy, the Gold Fury never stood a chance. Goes down right away, and Pittsburgh Knights claim their prize. But to go back to Vote, I mean, yeah, cooldown's good, but attack speed's good too, right? On your Chernobog.
But you get it with Vicious Barrage, so
That's
you
true,
don't
yeah.
necessarily have to prioritize attack speed early on with Chernobog, and if you want to go for the ability damage for more power plays in the early game. Well, Josh is about to find out just how much damage Zero's EmilZy and Adapting are capable of at least, but molluskk gonna deathbane away and Kiki follows suit.
Deathwalker not done though. He's looking for Xaliea. He has a 3-level advantage, 4-level over molluskk, who's also come in to try and slow this down. Cobra's Kiss is a good tool, but he might be in trouble as molluskk blinks in to try and confirm the blue. He might have thrown his life away. Is he able to ambush over the wall and make it back out though? Just barely.
LG are just trying to take whatever they can get at this point, Finch, and it's not a whole lot that the Pittsburgh Knights are actually allowing to go through for LG. And even in the instances where they are able to confirm their own farm, it's not spread as efficiently as what Lumi is probably hoping for in order to actually catch anybody back up within a reasonable amount of time. Luminosity are doing everything they can, I think, to try and stay relevant in this game. But at a certain point, Finch, I feel like this Deathwalker Achilles is just going to become way too problematic.
Level 16. Not quite as high as these hunters get a lot of time to their own right, but he's certainly scary to deal with as he dives beyond the tier 2, knowing that Xaliea can't stop him and molluskk for sure can't afford to be here. That does open up the door for the Pyromancer for the rest of the team. They just got the Gold Fury, now they're over to Pyro. Rage is online for Adapting, High to the Urchin there for Deathwalker. They're now starting to buy these win more items that once they get these stacks on for these next fights or two, is really going to catapult them into a bigger lead.
I mean, Adapting's not even bothering with any sort of movement speed items or defensive-based items. He's going straight for the burst and probably starting to itemize in towards the Deathbringer.
Kiki in some trouble, and now he's ulting. He recognized he couldn't afford to stick around any longer, especially with the ultimate coming out from Vote. Deathwalker blinks in, stun lands on a Joshy, roots there too. Aegis buys him time, but can't make it up into the Taiko drums. He won't even get to play a solo. He ends up falling, and Deathwalker gets credit. Now it's molluskk who's got to run. Though I'm not sure if Pittsburgh Knights know. Now they certainly do as he passes the minion wave. But they don't even care about him. They're starting up the Fire Giant at this point in the game. And Xaliea, without his ultimate, can't exactly contest.
Pittsburgh Knights are trying to close out this set as soon as possible, it seems, Finch. And
wow.
At 18 minutes, they're going to go ahead and claim the first Fire Giant of game number 3 here. And with that FG, I think any hopes of Luminosity killing Deathwalker just died with it.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen now. 6-1 and 5 for him. Has the height of the Urchin with that first stack coming through. He'll be very difficult to bring down indeed. Add an extra 1,500 gold to the equation, and the math gets even harder as Pittsburgh Knights gain control of the right side of the map by taking down that tier 2 molluskk. Can't even afford to be on his own side of the map, not with Deathwalker roaming around. This tier 1 a distant memory. He should even be able to come in and grab the tier 2 as well, as Kiki does some decent poke there to Zeros and Adapting, but it just won't amount to much.
Luminosity are just going to have to look on as Pittsburgh Knights continue to effortlessly siege every single structure across the map, every single objective. Vote actually ulting in onto Oceans, who was split pushing on the opposite side of the dual lane, but a little bit too late there to actually catch out Oceans before the back. And I started mentioning it about 10 minutes ago because this game snowballed so rapidly in Pittsburgh Knights' favor, but the discussion for Luminosity, I think 10 minutes ago, was probably more towards the we're just going to have to play base defense for this one. And I think that that is the only real direction that they can look towards if they want any sort of recovery.
They're going to have to fall back, Taco, and try and play around Joshy on this Raijin, trying to see if they can keep Xaliea relevant on this Jormungandr and get him some more farm. He's been getting bullied out a lot this game too, but it's just so difficult. I mean, look at the player damage charts. Zeros on a Habois is bottom in the game, and the Knights are still dominating, 13-3. I mean, the Habois can do damage. They just haven't needed it yet. He's certainly going to be able to.
He doesn't have to because Deathwalker's been a raid boss all game long on the Achilles. He is twice as much player damage as the next guy in line, and that's Xaliea.
It's not even close right now in terms of the impact. Joshy goes into the Taiko drums, but can't find Deathwalker. Adapting goes right to the back line, though, with the Sonic Boom, as Xaliea tries his best to disrupt and prevent the follow-up. But at this point, Pittsburgh Knights have regrouped, and you can just push right in and take the tier 2.
But that's every single ultimate from Luminosity. and the lowest HP member is Zeros. And
He's
that's
fine.
the Habwa, who
He's
still has the crushing wave, by the way, so it's not like LG can even afford to get close.
And get a little bit of sustain too from the Terra, from the Fire Giant buff, pop the Frenzy, and move right in. Deathwalker pulls 4 members' attention in the back line, so the Phoenix goes down. Kiki can't match up to the pressure. He falls first. That's another kill for the Knights. LG have to keep falling back and ceding ground to the Knights. The problem is, they're out of ground to cede. The next thing they're ceding is the Titan.
Disciplined as ever, though, the Pittsburgh Knights, instead of pushing even further into the Titan room of LG, they're going to turn their attention towards this mid lane instead, recognizing that the waves are pretty far pushed up, so they're going to have to bring the creeps back down if they want to reasonably siege this Phoenix.
No ultimate here for Xaliea either, so that spells his end. Vote gets the credit to improve to 3-1-6. He has the Odivoni Executioner, eventually decided that Hunter should attack things fast, and it's worked out pretty well for him, 3rd in the game in player damage so far. The Knights now threaten the mid lane Phoenix. They've got 4 members from LG nearby because Kiki respawns so quickly at this point. He's able to come rejoin the fray, but the mid Phoenix goes down. No way they can defend it.
1 Phoenix left standing on the right-hand side, adapting to blink out of Kiki's ultimate. Oceans even dropping the mounted archery, expecting to have had a little bit of follow-up there. But instead, that's going to be 2 pretty big team-fighting ultimates now on cooldown. And like we just mentioned, there is 1 Phoenix left standing. Fire Giant has thankfully worn off on the Pittsburgh Knights, but I'm not even sure that they need it in order to siege.
It looks like they're not too worried. Kiki takes half HP over the wall, but right into the back line goes Deathwalker. He starts to fall back as Joshy pulls the drums out. Zeros makes his way to the back line. Even though he dies, gets off really big damage. A big ultimate from adapting as well, creates some space, but still the Knights can't quite get this right side Phoenix. I think finally they might have bit off a little more than they can chew after getting all the tier 2 towers and 2 Phoenixes, and potentially losing Deathwalker's life. They'll fall back.
Deathwalker still on the escape. EmilZy not interested in trying to help out. Deathwalker going to sustain a little bit, almost takes down Kiki in the process, but Xaliea will finally get his revenge onto this Achilles, as Deathwalker will have to sit out for the next minute or so. And I actually think that might have been a possible game end for Pittsburgh Knights, but Adapting's Made You Look was still on cooldown for another second or so because he didn't drop it after connecting the Sonic Boom onto 4 different members.
That would have been the follow-up that they needed, because even though Zeros died, he got the crushing wave through, I think, 2 people as well. Critically, one of them, Joshy, who was in the Taiko drums, able to just barely clip him as well. So yet again, even though he died, Zeros, I think, had the kind of impact that you're looking for from the Hob Wall. They just couldn't quite close it out. Though I think they'll get another try, Taco, before too long. Fire Giant's up. It won't even be the enhanced version. To be fair, with this kind of lead, the Knights might even be okay with waiting that minute and grabbing the enhanced one, so they don't even have to worry about backdoor protections nearly as much.
And this might sound crazy, but I honestly wish that Luminosity would just try to challenge Pittsburgh Knights while they're pulling the enhanced Fire Giant. I don't think that they're going to win this waiting for Pittsburgh Knights to push into their base.
No.
Their best chance is going to be trying to just outright surprise Pittsburgh Knights on that FG.
That might be the call. I'm very interested to see how these teams want to handle it around this time. Maybe DPS low and hold. No, they'll just go ahead and grab the regular Fire Giant instead of waiting for the crossover and then push.
I thought that for a second that Pittsburgh Knights might want to wait for the enhanced Fire Giant,
Me too,
which is another reason why I made the suggestion, but turns out Pittsburgh Knights just want 2 FGs. And the fact that they get 2 without one of them being an enhanced Fire Giant,
It's a lot.
probably sums it up.
That explains, I think, the disparity between the 2 squads right now. Boat's getting in some good shots. No one able to get pressure on him, and the Phoenix is down low, but not entirely removed yet. LG have still been able to hold on so far. Obviously can't knock up the Jormungandr, but he takes some damage. Kiki, his ultimate's already been expended and finds very little.
Kiki wanted to pull Zero's actives, but not a chance in hell that Halbois felt threatened enough by a lone Thor to actually think that Luminosity were going to be able to collapse any further. With all 3 Phoenixes now being exposed, Xalia's trying to go in here, but it's molluskk who just gets blown up.
He at least is able to know he can't make it back to the fountain. Adapting cuts him off with the Sonic Boom, and that'll put an end to the aspirations for molluskk. On the Circuit, Adapting finds a double as Oceans goes down as well. Xalia's next, make it a triple kill for Adapting to close out the game and to close out the set. LG, unfortunately, could not keep up, and Knights win.
It was very unlikely, I think, that Luminosity were going to be able to upset Pittsburgh Knights overall in this set. I think that they were aiming to try and pull at least one game off of these guys, but Pittsburgh Knights were just way too on top of their game today.
Very, very impressive game here for the Knights. And LG, I know that they weren't the favorites coming into this one, but they're no slouches. This is a team that has been at least taking a game off just about everyone that they've played so far. But this was stifling from the Knights. They never gave LG a moment to breathe. And you know, you can say what you want about the role swap. I don't think Joshy looked particularly comfortable there, but at least LG were coming in trying something different, knowing they had to make some change to try and get some better results.
Always appreciate the innovation from these guys, and I honestly think that this role swap might have been one of their best chances at trying to catch Pittsburgh Knights off guard. I mean, PK, I doubt that they're going to undermine Luminosity to the extent where they wouldn't try to do at least some prep work, and it looked like the homework had very clearly been done there by PK. They had very strong responses to every single one of the drafts and compositions that we saw Luminosity trying to bring out, and not only that, but it was just the way that PK chose to control the map.
That's right. That solo pressure here in Game 3 onto the Jormungandr was devastating, and really no chance for LG to ever recover from that. But that's going to do it. The Knights clean this one up 3-0. Very impressive. We'll get it back over to the desk for some more analysis.
Impressive is absolutely the word that I would choose. I mean, this is just Knights going to work.
Yeah, since that early gank coming from adapting in that solo lane, it was not expected because of the starts that he's been doing in the previous 2 games. But since then, kind of allowing Deathwalker to really pop off that game, going 6-2-9, over 25,000 player damage.
You know, it's interesting looking at this match and everything that it had in store, because I have to agree with what Taco said, you know, that you got to try something. Maybe trying something is the best shot that LG has at beating Pittsburgh. But also I want to touch on something Ryan Jarman from the console scene said on Twitter. He's like, look, man, Joshy has been playing well. Why move him, if anything? So these are the 2 thought processes out there. One, you got to do something because nothing's working. But also, one of the only things that's working is the thing you're going to change.
Yeah.
And seeing the result of the match, I gotta say, I'm a little on the other side. It's odd seeing that Joshy kind of didn't really do much, man.
It feels more of a long-term change than kind of a short-term.
Sure.
Thinking about the second phase, because
one step backward, 2 steps forward.
Probably because at this point now, being 0-5 after this set loss, I don't think LG can get into the top 6 any longer. I'm pretty sure Pittsburgh Knights now being 5-2 are almost but clinched, and that could be the reasoning behind this switch. Thinking about phase 2.
Certainly could be. That said, you know, it is a long season. What is it? 13 weeks, and then 13 weeks after that. So a 26-week season. Certainly something to think about. Long term isn't a bad idea. 6-1-7 for adapting. Zeros on the Habwa. Not a lot of player damage for Zeros on that Hebo, huh?
He definitely didn't feel super comfortable on the Habwa compared to his other picks, having to be super close range. Making that one Phoenix dive was a little iffy.
I'm glad you brought that up. As I'm walking to the desk, Ro walks by, the coach for Knights, and he's like, oh, what a bunch of trolls is the word I'll use on broadcast. And I'm like, why, what's up? He's like, he was listening to the Zeros as he's playing. He's like, Zero's like, I'm only ulting because I have no player damage. I'm only ulting because I have no player damage.
Oh, my goodness.
And Zero's ults in there and gets 10K, and, you know, they win the game. You're allowed to have some fun when you're walking in for the 3rd victory. I absolutely think that's the truth. So good stuff there coming out from these guys.
He almost got the kill, too. It was a shell that actually saved Joshy at the very end of it all. The Terra was a great pick for EmilZy yet again, showing off why he's probably one of the best Terra players in the game. I think now people watching this set should actually look at EmilZy from this point on and be like, all right, this Terra is an issue.
It always has been. I mean, it's been the issue since EmilZy was playing last year on a different team.
Yeah.
And the Terra out of EmilZy is always relevant. It's always lurking. It's always something you gotta look out for. So why don't you just ask him yourself? EmilZy is sitting by along with another teammate. The post-game interview coming at you right now.
I do have Zeros and EmilZy here for the post-game interview. First off, congratulations, guys, on that win in that set. That was very dominant from you all. I want to ask you guys both, and you can both talk to it for me. Did the role swap throw you all at all, that they switched up Joshy and Oceans? Or I guess just what were your thoughts on it playing against it there 3 times in a row?
it definitely through adapting off at least, because like after the second game, I think Joshy played Poseidon 2 games in a row. And after the second game, we're like, oh, Joshy, why is he playing Poseidon all the time? And adapting, wait, that's Joshy playing Poseidon?
I don't know. Adapting really didn't pay attention. Like everyone was talking about it because we saw Joshy and Ocean swap seats before the game. You can like look over in the other studio, and everyone was talking about it. Ken's just sitting there, doesn't hear anything. That's middle of game, so he's like, wait, what? Joshy Smith. So that's pretty troll. But like in all fairness, I think if they role swap, it's probably because that works out for them. So they're just gonna need some time, obviously, to readjust to those roles. So hopefully it's gonna pay out for them, like in the long run.
And are you guys in a little bit of a rush today, or what? Because those are some pretty fast games that we had going on there.
Yeah, well, I mean, we gotta get home, watch the Dick and Renegade set. That's kind of what we wanted. Kind of miss out on the rush hour as well. It's gonna be a quick drive home. I think also we just want to make your days like shorter,
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Zeros, for you, I wanted to ask you, it felt like with all of your picks in this set, you kind of had these picks where even if you were getting focused, which you kind of were to some extent, you were still able to get plenty of your damage off and value. Is that something that you were considering when you were getting the picks? Like, in case you get focused, you can still have a lot of damage? Or was there a consistent thought to all three of them?
I mean, if it was up to me, I'd be playing tough by, they're like, Zeus is looking good there. I'm like, not really, but they're like, yeah. So
yeah.
I just play whatever, dude.
Do you remember that the last fight? He just he-balled him. Like, I think 2 minutes, 2 minutes before that fight, he's like, oh, I'm gonna have no player damage this game. He was like 1-0-0. And then he's like, okay, I'm just gonna get player damage. He just ults into 5 people.
I think we were up like 16-0 or something in kills, and I was 1-0-0, and like I literally haven't done any damage in the whole game.
Big impact on the team.
I'm like, I'm ulting here, dude.
I respect that.
That's a pretty good reason to want to go in there. Got to get your player damage up there in the charts to match everybody else's. But with this set confirmed, I think you guys were probably expecting the win to go your way. I think most people were expecting it. But now moving forward, who do you guys view as like your next point of competition?
I mean, who do we have? Renegades and Splice?
Renegades and Splice. I think we just need to win both games, right? To cement ourselves in that top 3 that we really want. I think we've learned a lot from our losses, and I mean, I think we're ready to prove that we're the best team, and hopefully we can clean sweep from here on out and then win MSI. That's the goal.
All right, last question for you all. With Renegades playing later and them coming up for you all here before too long, I guess just where do you all see this team at right now? Are you surprised all they came in and already looking this good, or just, I guess, what are your thoughts on them?
I think they're definitely a top 6 team. Like before we moved to America, before we had all our visas and stuff, like they were like pretty much the only other full European team. So we scrimmed them a lot, like when we started this team, and they're really good, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, cherry on landping. Can't do anything,
Well, you're exactly right. Again, Zeros and EmilZy mid and support there for Pittsburgh Knights. Good game there, you guys. We're going to take a quick break and get right back into some more SPL.